Take a little longer on the big YouTube channel. We are live here, Just Baseball trade deadline stream. You got the host of Who's Better Baseball here to kick you off. We're going to bring in a lot of different voices from our podcast network, breaking down everything as all the trades trickle in. It's been a fun trade deadline, Patrick. This is Patrick Lyons, by the way, writer for us, and also upcoming podcast for us, the Rockies Insider. We're really excited about that. What have you felt just watching all the action the last couple of days? It has been a lot of fun seeing plenty of action around the league, a ton of trades over the last 4 or 5 days.
It's been exciting. It's been great. And it still feels like there's a lot more coming. This trade deadline seems to lack almost a superstar punch. Mm-hmm. And we're sort of starting to see teams get a little bit more creative. We've seen that with some three-team trades. And we're also seeing controllable players, younger guys going where teams get 2-3 bites at the apple, 3 seasons with that player. And so it's really just making everything a little bit more interesting than we would normally see it. So everyone seems to be participating. I think everyone's made at least one trade so far. And I still expect for us to have maybe 10 to 15 within the next hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah, I wrote an article today for us at Just Baseball breaking down the pace of the deadline because it has felt so rampant, so crazy compared to last year. The funny thing is, not that different. If you look at the week leading into the trade deadline last year, there was 25 trades. This year, in the last 4 or 5 days, there's been 28 trades. Now, that's not counting what we've already gotten already. But I really wanted to sort of analyze that pace because it feels like it's been so crazy. And I think it's because there was just that condensation where it didn't quite start until Friday, and then the floodgates open, and they've pretty much stayed open where we've had a steady trickle of trades each and every day, something big to talk about. But the thing that really popped out to me from looking at our trade deadline tracker last year, there was 26 trades on deadline day, and we're just getting started here. There's going to be a lot. We don't know if there's going to be another big trade. We don't know if Garrett Crochet is going to move, Blake Snell. Those are the shoes we're all waiting to see if they drop. But you're going to see a lot of relievers move. You're going to see, Taylor Ward, Luis Rengifo, Paul DeJong just got traded. Like, we're going to see a lot of these pieces change around as there's so many teams that are not only looking at this year, but like you said, with control, teams like, all right, well, close enough. Let's trade our infielder for your pitcher, and they each have 2 years of control, and let's just change our rosters around a little bit. So a lot of movement so far. It's been a lot of fun.
It has been. And I think so much of the reason for this slow trickle, right? Like this big impact that we're getting late is because there were so many teams, particularly in the National League, that were still within that wild card hunt. We had so many clubs, and we still do. We still have clubs that you can make the case maybe they should be buying, but there's almost not enough stock, right? The supply and demand, there's not enough supply. There's a lot more demand. That's why it's a seller's market. And I think teams were patient enough rather than to try to pick off from some of the scraps of those teams that are not in the hunt. There's still some quality players on those clubs, right? Like the A's and the White Sox, Marlins, Rockies. They're quality players, but if they wait a little bit longer, you're going to get some better options available to you. And we're starting to see that. We'll get to some of those things today. I mean, look at Atlanta. They waited and waited and waited. Boom. They got a big bat in Jorge Soler because the Giants ultimately decided, you know what? We are out. We're out of it. So we are open for business. We're going to go ahead and start trading those guys. And so I think it's benefited teams to be a little bit more patient, still a seller's market. So we got a lot more names still going to be on the move.
Absolutely. I want to address a couple of comments here. First one, look, I know we're not Peter, Arm, and Jack, but you will see them later on in this stream. So hold on. They're going to take you. I think Peter and Jack are expected to come on for the final 30, 45 minutes. Also, of course, as soon as the host of Locked On Mets, which is myself, hops on a live stream, the Mets finally make a trade. I could have done, a TikTok about it, a Locked On Mets podcast. I'll have to wait. Paul Blackburn goes to the Mets. Not the most exciting of names, but hey, they needed some starter depth. They get them Blackburn, 4.41 ERA in the season and 9 starts. I'm not blown away by it, but hey, it's a trade nonetheless. I want to talk about what I think is the biggest deal of the day, though, and that was the Trevor Rogers trade, because I was pretty shocked, as I think a lot of people were, about the package that the Marlins got for Trevor Rogers, a pitcher with a mid-4s ERA, but he has been better over his last 11 starts, ERA in the 3.3s. So they're trading for a guy that had his peak in 2021 when he finished second in Rookie of the Year, but has not been that good since. 2.5 years of control. And to make that deal, the Orioles give up Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers. two players that were blocked on their roster, but for the Marlins are going to be everyday players immediately. Let's start there. The Marlins get a haul for Rogers. Their lineup got a lot better and a lot better for years to come.
Marlins, I think, did a great job in this. I think it's fascinating to look at every trade from both perspectives, right? Is that two teams can come away from a trade feeling like they've won the trade, or like they've won. They've gotten something for their guy that maybe was a exposable asset or expiring one at that. And that's one of those things that's going to happen where you might not win the trade, but you feel good about it. And so, yeah, the Orioles have two guys that they can't really use. Stars, we were kind of expecting a lot out of him when he debuted 2 years ago. Never really came to fruition, but you give him everyday starts in Miami, you're going to start to see a lot more. And Connor Norby, now, maybe he's able to stick there at second base. As you said, Jackson Holliday is that guy going forward for the Orioles. And then, again, as you said, Rogers isn't typically that kind of guy that you would think you would cost a Connor Norby, a top 100 guy like that, who's been absolutely raking at Norfolk, one of the many guys that the Orioles have had in AAA that have just been dominant, right, and really prosperous in the International League. So they have to give up a lot, but you like what Baltimore's been able to do and target certain guys that they like, from Zach Eflin to now, of course, Trevor Rogers, and say, you know what, we can work something out. The Rockies kind of experienced that a little bit in the Nick Mears trade, where Milwaukee seems like they may have figured out a couple things. We're going to make some tweaks. You might have been tipping your pitches, and now all of a sudden he's going to go out and be a dominant setup man. You really like the odds of Rogers getting back to that 2021 All-Star form that he had with the Marlins a few years back.
I think it's interesting because if the Orioles had traded that same package for Tanner Scott, I don't think any of us would have blinked. And Tanner Scott's a rental. So it is sort of interesting to think about value. And I think for the Orioles, the 2 extra years of control, getting a starting pitcher was more valuable to them. But if you look at what they've done overall, I'm still left a little bit underwhelmed. They got Zach Eflin, they get Trevor Rogers, but we were hoping that they were going to see, get a Crochet. When Snell's come available, we thought, okay, maybe that's the answer. It was expected that they might make a big splash for a starting pitcher. They've gotten a couple guys that shirt up the middle to the back end of the rotation, but I guess they are having all the confidence and faith in the world that Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez are enough at the top of that rotation, with Eflin sliding in as the number 3.
And you do get Eflin for next year as well. He'll be
yes.
the highest paid Orioles player on next year's roster, unless they make some big free agent signings or, really bring back Corbin Burns. But they've given up some of their prospect pool already. They still have a ton of depth, but this is a project. I was looking at it and I thought to myself, only 3 more years of Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman together. Now, of course, if Adley goes and signs an extension, you're like, okay, great. And 3 years is a lot. They went to the postseason last year. They're headed that way this year. So we are talking about a potential 5-year run, but that window is already seemingly closing on one hand. And on the other, you have 3 more full seasons of all these guys together, in addition to this year too. So you don't need to rush it. You don't maybe need to put all your eggs in that one basket. So they get 2 starting pitchers for next year's team. And Rogers as well in 2026. So I think they're being almost a little bit cautious in a way. Like you said, you thought maybe they would have that impact, but they've got the guys already there, and maybe they've got one already in the system in Jackson Holly. Maybe he's that guy that injects a little bit of life as well on that roster.
Yeah, and they could bring up Mayo as well, plug him in. So that's the other big piece that they have to maybe increase that lineup's production. I think the Orioles are this team where, if you look at what they've done since the offseason and you remember that they traded for Corbin Burns, maybe you feel a little bit better about how all in they've been on this season. But I think because they have this stockpile of assets, everyone is hoping and waiting for them to make that big trade. And it's funny because every single fan base, when you're thinking about your team as a seller, you want to get those Orioles prospects. So I find it kind of hilarious that the Marlins of all teams, with Trevor Rogers, got their hands on some of those guys that everybody was mocking. And it sort of leads me to the Erick Fedde trade from yesterday, because it felt like the White Sox didn't get enough for Fedde. They end up getting 3 prospects, and, Miguel Vargas, already up in the big league. So that's the big piece for them that slides right into their lineup. It's just one of those things where I wonder if they went really far down the road on a complicated 3-team trade, that they didn't wait long enough, because who knows, maybe if they waited a little bit longer, I don't know if it would have been the Orioles, but some other team could have swooped in and given them a better offer for Fedde. I thought that trade package was a little bit light.
Yeah, Pham is the rental, of course, and he's good in that St. Louis clubhouse, or at least he was with whatever it looked like back then a few years ago, right? It's been a while. But you almost kind of think of it like the Zach Eflin deal with the Rays, whereby you're getting an extra year control of someone like Erick Fedde. So you would think that you could put together a package. Maybe you include Paul DeJong in that. He obviously goes in a separate deal, that you're able to get something. And with, one of the most prized pitchers around, Garrett Crochet, at least before he opens his mouth, you're figuring, well, the White Sox, look, they're open for business. They've got their second 14-plus game losing streak already on record. Like, they've got nowhere to go but up. And yeah, they do get a little bit better. They do get a lot younger with the Miguel Vargas signing. I think that was a great pickup for them. But you're right. It seems like overall they maybe haven't gotten back what a lot of White Sox fans probably would have hoped. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with just Garrett Crochet in general, right? We're talking about 2 months of Pham, 1 extra year of Erick Fedde, and you get 6 years of Miguel Vargas. I think that's pretty good. But you're right in the general assessment that, like, the White Sox, with the most to gain out of any team here, what are they doing, right? They need to get better for their future, especially considering that they're not going to have a top 10 draft pick. They've had it the last 2 years. And so because of the new CBA, their 10th pick is going to be the highest that they can have next year. So they are really, really in some dire straits right now.
We thought the White Sox were going to run this trade deadline, and to package Pham and Kopech in the deal as well. Not that I think those guys had a ton of value, but it just felt like, even for Kopech in particular, when you see Usei Kikuchi getting the package that he's gotten, Rogers, guys that have good stuff that are getting a little bit more just because there's a lack of pitching, I thought the White Sox would be able to extract more value. And it does feel like they need Garrett Crochet to get dealt here for a big package to sort of salvage this deadline. They've done a lot to rebuild over the last year and a half anyway, but that's the one missing piece here. So thank you, Javi, for the nice comment. But that's the missing piece for me. And I'm really curious if it does happen, because it still seems like we're going to get a Garrett Crochet trade. Are they going to trade him, though, 80 cents on the dollar because of his comments? And you're going to look at the Garrett Crochet package and say, oh, that's not that much better than what Usei Kikuchi got the Blue Jays. And if that's the case, then it's going to look like even more of a loss for the White Sox, even though they might have just been dealt a pretty bad hand.
Yeah, the comments that Crochet made about, maybe almost being disgruntled in a sense, not going with the flow, is one thing. But Crochet's market is fascinating. We just have never had a pitcher on the market like this before. A player who has already in one season surpassed his innings pitched over his entire career, never spent time in the minors. So as a reliever in arbitration, he's not going to get a lot of money. So he's got 2 more years of club control. He's going to be incredibly affordable, but is he going to need Tommy John surgery? You almost need to trade him. It needs to be like some kind of sign-in trade. Like, look, we're gonna acquire this guy, and then we need to have a discussion of a 4-year extension. Is what I keep settling on. Is that we're going to give you guaranteed money over the next 2 years, because if you have Tommy John surgery immediately, that's going to tamp your numbers down even more. And then we're going to take 2 of your free agent years. I'd almost argue that the White Sox might get a better package if they pump the brakes just a little bit, come to an agreement with Garrett Crochet on a 4-year deal, and then turn around and trade him this offseason, or maybe at next year's trade deadline when some time has passed. The concern maybe for Tommy John surgery is gone, or maybe it's already here and we have a better idea of what's going to happen going forward. It's not an easy situation for Chris Getz and Jerry Reinsdorf to have to deal with on the South Side.
I think the other option for them is to let this thing play out. I mean, obviously they're going to keep shopping, but let's say the deal doesn't happen, not even to extend him, but let him finish off the season the way he said. Maybe you plug in some extra prospects, make it a 6-man rotation, just protect him as much as you can, but let him go that full season so that he hits the market in the off season with, I mean, what's he got? He's at 110 plus innings already, I think. Let's see how many innings he's at. But if he can get over 160 innings, now you're trading. Okay, he just ran the whole marathon. He did it. Season's over. Now you shop him in the off season. Look, if you look at the market, you got Corbin Burns, you got Max Fried. A lot of the pitchers that we thought were going to really headline this market, like Walker Buehler, there's a few others that are escaping me. Shane Bieber went down. They're not quite there. So you might have a market where a couple of those big guys sign, and then Garrett Crochet has an even more handsome market in the off season, coming off of a full season instead of all the question marks. He's at 114 innings. So if he makes another 10 turns, I mean, or even 8 turns, you get him to 160, you shut him down. I think that might be the best call for action here, but it'll feel like a huge disappointment for Red Sox fans to have to wait a couple months, and they're going to be just holding on every single start, making sure, okay, is this guy going to make it? Is he going to survive? Because he does not fit their window to contend at all.
I'm very much of the mindset to get security, get something that's more guaranteed than go for the gusto. And so on one hand, you look at the Yusei Kikuchi deal, and Houston probably gave up far too much for Yusei Kikuchi, but you know what you're getting with a guy like that in your rotation. You don't know what you're getting with Garrett Crochet. You may continue to get a Cy Young caliber starting pitcher for the next 2+ years. Or you could be talking about a guy who throws maybe 30 innings at the end of the 2026 season because he just came back from Tommy John surgery. Like, there's such variability. And I think a lot of teams do go for that gusto. They will go after players and take that risk because you can't repeat a Garrett Crochet. You could turn around and craft a Yusei Kikuchi-like player out of nowhere. I mean, shoot, the Astros already did Ronel Blanco in a lot of ways. And you could say, oh, you can have a guy like that you pick up off the scrap heap, but you're not going to find a talent like Garrett Crochet. And it just seems like teams right now might be a little bit reticent to go all in and to give maybe what it takes for a Garrett Crochet. There's less and less available arms that are out there. Cal Quantrill still available, not a big strikeout guy, but still he is one of those guys that's going to be out there for the Rockies. A couple other starting pitchers, but we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Any new transactions? I haven't gone on X to see if there's been any notifications. Ken Rosenthal, are you alive out there? Where are you?
I still think we're sitting on Paul Blackburn as the last deal. And Cade Morris going back. Don't love that, to be honest with you. I kind of like Cade Morris, but no one else outside of my Mets fans are going to care about that. So we'll talk
Paul
about
Blackburn he's no Yoenis Cespedes from the A's, right?
No.
It's not one of those kind of deals, but still, it's something.
Yeah, it's something. We've been talking a lot about Kikuchi, and like we said, it feels like it was a big overpay. We had a great article that went up today from our new writers, Chap Cunningham, and he talked about Kikuchi. You see the overall stats, 4.75 ERA, not great, but what he breaks down in the article is Kikuchi leaving his fastball over the heart of the plate too much. When he gets that fastball up in the zone, it's been very effective. I want to say that batters were hitting like under 100 against it when he got up in the zone. I'm trying to find that exact stat, but regardless, the point still stands. If the Astros view that as something that they can tweak, they can figure that out to get him to locate up in the zone. Well, they're viewing Kikuchi as a guy that is going to take the ball for them, which is huge, being able to get innings down the stretch because they desperately need them. And he has the upside to start a playoff game if they can tweak him a little bit and get him right. I do believe some of those numbers have really tailed off lately. I think he was throwing the ball pretty well earlier in the season. He has a lot of strikeouts so far. So the Kikuchi deal, it seems like a crazy return. And I think as it goes back to Crochet and Snell, you have to beat that, right? If you're that team optically, if you're the Giants, if you're the White Sox, you want to do better than the Kikuchi trade, the Fetty trade. But the packages that have been out there for those other pieces have been so high, it's hard to get there. But Kikuchi, I think the Blue Jays did an amazing job on a rental to get a ton of value. And it seems like they're only trading rentals, but they've done pretty well in doing that.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack with the Kikuchi to Houston deal. Houston is one of those teams where, as you said, they've got the confidence that they can make those tweaks for a player. And they also have the confidence to bring a guy back. Like Justin Verlander was there a very short while and realized, you know what, I do want to stick around and be a part of this. And so he could be a player that they extend for 2 more years. Sure, it's going to cost a little bit more after they make those changes, and now he becomes a much more viable free agent starting pitcher. But still, I think Houston is one of those teams that can convince a guy and coax him to stick around as they go into free agency and then re-sign with that team. And as you put it, yeah, Toronto, I think, has done better than any team selling here at the trade deadline, maybe even a little bit better than Miami, which can't forget Luis Ariz. He is a part of that, not necessarily at the trade deadline, but still that's part of the package of guys. I think Toronto's done an amazing job in getting off, as you said, some of those expiring assets from Kikuchi, Nate Pearson, even Yimi Garcia, Danny Jansen to the Boston Red Sox, and Justin Turner to Seattle, which brings us back around to one of the reasons why Houston may have paid so much for Yusei Kikuchi. The Seattle Mariners are not going anywhere. They are not quieting down. The Mariners, a sustainable level of success that they want to have for years and years, they go out and get Randy Arozarena. They get Justin Turner. And so you got to think Houston's going, well, you know what? We only have so many opportunities at this. Bregman is probably going to go somewhere else in free agency this offseason. We need to really make this last just a little bit longer. So, okay, yeah, we'll pay the overage right now on a Yusei Kikuchi.
You know, that race in the AL West is going to be fascinating because there might not be a wild card team out of that division, but you have the Rangers that are now within 4 games. They made a trade for Chafin, so they're not selling. You have the Mariners and the Astros today on deadline day tied. So, yeah, it's going to be a wild race from here on out. We're going to have actually the host of the Marine Layer podcast coming on at some point to this stream soon, and they're going to give us your full Mariners breakdown on what they've done and what else they could do. But it is really interesting to see what those couple teams do. Would Yandy Diaz be a fit with the Astros? It would be a pretty amazing trade to pull off. The problem is that's going to cost a ton. So I don't know if that's going to happen. But Yandy Diaz, do you think he's going to get dealt? Where will he get dealt if he gets traded?
Tampa is just unloading the coffers. Like, I can't believe how many players that they've got. Them and Toronto are just basically playing this game of who's going to win the trade deadline.
The Marlins too. Those are the 3 so far. Like last year, the Mets did really well. The Cardinals did well. The White Sox did well. Those have been the 3 teams that have really taken advantage of the sellers market up to this point for sure. Yeah, Tampa, they still got Pete Fairbanks that they could deal. They already traded Jason Adam. I don't know why they wouldn't trade Fairbanks. Similar control. They still have Zach Littell, who is just a fine for them, who's got a low 4 ERA. If Blackburn is getting something on the market, Littell's got 2 years of control. I think you're going to be able to get a couple pieces there. So I don't think the Rays are done selling at all. I think Yandy Diaz is the one that would blow things up. Right now, they could trade those other guys, and you never know. The Rays could still find their way in the race down the stretch with the way they can supplement guys coming off injury right now. But yeah, the Rays are really interesting to watch right now.
And they've gotten back some big league pieces, and they also have some replacement pieces. Junior Caminero, call him up, right? Christopher Morel, maybe he goes over to first base if Diaz gets traded, or Diaz just then becomes the DH, whatever it is. They have some options to stay in and kind of keep it interesting. Don't forget Aaron Savali going to Milwaukee, who's had a sneaky good trade deadline. Like, they've made a lot of those moves. Phil Maton, ya boy, going to the Mets, right? So you're right. Tampa Bay has been crazy aggressive, and look, they don't have any connection to these players. So Yandy Diaz, if the offer is right, that they can go ahead and get rid of him. They can wait for the offseason too if they need to. Maybe if they are going to kind of play things a little roguish like and say, hey, we've subtracted, but we're still kind of in this hunt. You do need someone like Yandy Diaz to stick around in your lineup. But if the offer's there, they're going to go for it. I think what we saw in the chat live over on YouTube was a question about Blake Snell. If we're talking about big names that could go, I think the Giants have been sneaky good this trade deadline with the Soler and Luke Jackson to Atlanta. They also offload Alex Cobb. I think that one was to Cleveland. So Michael Ballman, who they had just gotten from Seattle, boom, offload him immediately. They're doing that like soft sell where they're not removing some major pieces that they're going to need next year. They need some pop. They're going to miss Jorge Soler, but once Jung-Ho Lee is back next year off the IL, he's going to be there. Toronto got rid of all those guys, but they still have one more year with Bo Bichette. They still got one more year with Vlad Guerrero. We're seeing Texas kind of do a little bit of a soft sell, right? Like, they got rid of Michael Lorenzen, but that's because they've got some of those starting pitchers coming back. Teams are just being really creative this offseason. And that would be maybe one of the more creative things, is to deal someone like Blake Snell at this year's trade deadline. Do you think it's going to happen within the next 2 hours, Ryan?
It's a really tough one to gauge. You know, I've been talking about it a lot from a Mets perspective, and now that they got Blackburn, I think they're out, which is funny to say, but I think the Mets just needed one starter. Blake Snell, it would make sense to trade him. I think what they had to look at here is they're 4 games back in the wild card race. Now, currently, they just got Robbie Ray back. They were going to get Alex Cobb back. They traded him, but they can look at their rotation and say, we got Logan Webb, Blake Snell, and Robbie Ray. Let's just go for it, right? Let's go for it. Let's try to win, because that might be their best rotation in this wild card race outside of Atlanta. That three-headed monster is what they were sort of counting on, right? They came into this season thinking that, Webb and Snell would carry them until they got Ray back. Well, now it's all happening for you. I think it's got to take a pretty big return to give up on that. But at the same time, you might be kicking yourself if you don't, because you are behind in this race. You did just trade a big bat in Soler. Maybe this is a time where you should just take advantage and get something of value for Snell. I think they're wasting an opportunity if they don't do it, but I'm just not quite sure if there's a team that's going to pony up and give them the package that they want, especially considering the fact that any team that trades for him has to know that flight risk. He's probably going to opt out if he pitches well. Either he pitches great and he opts out, and hopefully you're able to ride that to a World Series, or he doesn't pitch well and he's on your books for $30 million next year. It's a very complicated trade. I think that's the funny thing. The two biggest shoes here to drop, Crochet and Snell, are both so intricate, so complicated that I don't know if a deal gets done in the next 90 minutes.
Yeah, Slate Man in the chat saying swinging for the fences on Crochet. You're swinging for the fences also on Blake Snell, as you said, the flight risk, right? He can opt out. You don't know if that 15 strikeout performance in 6 innings, which has never happened since 1901. It was against the Rockies, but it still counts. It is a major league team. And that is that the guy that you're getting? Is the fact that he didn't really have that true spring training part of it, like Blake Snell has said, was it on Instagram or was it on YouTube? Sliding into the messages in the comments about, dude, I haven't had a spring training, and so now he's finally kind of got his sea legs under him, if you will. So, is he that guy? I tend to think that the Giants aren't going to do that. It's a soft sell, where again, Soler is significant, but at the same time, I don't know that it totally changes their future in the next couple years with all the signings, with the Jung-Hoo Lee, with the Matt Chapman. And if you're able to keep Snell around, okay, you're able to kind of go back, like you said, with Robbie Ray and Logan Webb. And the fact that the Reds are now pretty much taking themselves out of the hunt. We're seeing that in the chat. Sure. Nice job picking up Ty France, but you do move Frankie Montas and Lucas Sims, reliever that goes to the Boston Red Sox. So now the Reds have kind of taken a step back. The Cubs are still almost inexplicably hanging around, acquiring players, 6 games under 500, but they're only 6 games back of the final wild card spot, which is owned by the San Diego Padres, who have been relatively quiet. Yeah, they got to rise early, but then they gave up a boatload and a buttload. They gave up both of those things for a Jason Adam from the Rays. So these teams still feel like they're confident that they can maybe make something happen, even if they subtract the right pieces, especially with injured players coming back into the fold. Anything can happen in the final 2 months. Anything can happen still in the next hour.
Anything can happen. I think the interesting part about the Soler trade with the Giants is it's very easy to fill a DH spot, right? Okay. If they were really going into a sell, wouldn't Matt Chapman be out there for teams looking for a third baseman? There's other pieces that they could be more aggressive to sell. I think they had seen Soler hitting their ballpark for a little bit. And yeah, he had been much better in June and July, but the opportunity to get off of that entire contract, reallocate that this offseason, you know that they're going to want to try to get into the Juan Soto sweepstakes. I doubt they pull it off, but they're always in that room trying to offer a lot of money to these guys. Saving some money there does make some sense for them. Whereas Blake Snell, if you're not going to get that return, and look, the comment I've had on the screen here, to package him with, let's just say, one of the Rogers brothers who have 2 years of control, try to get a top 100 prospect. To me, if you're trading Snell and Taylor or Tyler Rogers, whichever one, I think you need to get 2 top 100 prospects, because that's the price that's out there right now to package Snell with somebody else. I think it's got to be a huge deal. I like this one. Second for Soto. Let's go. Second for Aaron Judge. Who else have they been second on over the last couple of years? But hey, you'll be whatever it is, $14 million. I don't remember how much Soler was making, but that much closer to second place on Juan Soto by making the deal. Yeah, the Giants are interesting for sure. Arson Judge. We got a Mets fit in here, so I'll address the Paul Blackburn edition real quick. I think he's a fifth starter. I think that the Mets really like Jose Butto. in their bullpen right now. He's been lights out, so this allows them to do that. If this is true, we got a big one. Tanner Scott to the Padres.
They're listening. They are listening. They know.
That's really exciting. I got to see an actual confirmed tweet or something on that one. But our YouTube commenters are saying Tanner Scott to the Padres, so we'll trust him on that. AJ Preller, we thought he was going to make a big move. We'll find out how much he paid for this one, but that definitely helps them out in a big way.
Yeah, improving that bullpen is obviously what they've been targeting. I mean, they did have an all-star closer in Robert Suarez this year, so along with Adam. And then if you are adding Tanner Scott, which Ken Rosenthal is saying it's still pending a medical review, so this thing has definitely gone far down the pipeline. You like what San Diego has done there. Again, we're still waiting for that like big punch. I mean, the Twins, they've been kind of quiet this trade deadline. They get Trevor Richards from the Blue Jays, according also to Ken Rosenthal and Dan Hayes. But we're waiting for those bigger names and maybe a surprise name. I still think there might be a big surprise out there because I don't know that we saw Christopher Morel maybe get traded. The package that ended up getting for Yusei Kikuchi. It just seems that teams are trying to think a little bit outside of the box and they're less interested in those expiring players and acquiring guys who maybe have a couple flaws, but you're going to have them around for the next couple years or so. So there's going to be somebody out there that we didn't expect or even think was even on the market getting moved. It's fascinating.
Yeah, the Padres making this trade, there's some question, what else will they do? I don't know. Crochet to the Padres has felt like the answer for a long time. The one team that would just do it and not care and figure it out later. But for now, I would think that Tanner Scott might be their biggest addition. We got people asking for the Marine Lair boys, so let's bring them on. What's going on, guys? All right. So are your Mariners done? Have they made their last move? What else are we looking for, and how do you guys feel so far? We'll start with what they've done to the lineup. Either one of you can take it away. How do you feel about Rosarena and Justin Turner?
Go ahead, Lyle.
Good. I mean, listen, how many big name bats have gotten moved so far? Like the biggest name bats have essentially been what? A Rosarena and Isaac Paredes. That's about it, right? Paredes went to a team that nobody expected him to go to. So of the contending teams that are trading for offense, feels like the Mariners got the biggest guy out on the market so far. Now, are they done? Well, I can save that for TJ, the are they done part. But yeah, and then the Justin Turner thing, what that basically said to me yesterday, and I tweeted this out, it's pretty well known at this point. The Mariners had a pretty aggressive offer out there for Vladdy. Like they really tried on that one, but I don't think he's available. It seems like the Blue Jays don't want to move him. They want to center around him for next year. They're not they're not trying to move him. So with that, the Mariners had to pivot. They knew they needed a corner guy. Justin Turner's not the guy he used to be. Like his power is basically gone at this point, but you know what? He's still like a 105 WRC plus hitter. And since June 1st, he's been really good. That's all they kind of need him to be at this point. That's like a 15% upgrade over Ty France if he just does that. So yeah, overall, like I give this deadline for them about a B plus right now. If they go get one more bat before 6 p.m. Eastern here, I'll give it an A.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, if I would say they're done, I would say it's about 50-50 if they're done or not. It seems like at this point, the only other move they would make is for Yandy Diaz. If those reports are correct, it seems like they have one last Hail Mary offer in for Yandy Diaz, which I think they're stacking up against the Yankees and the Astros. They could easily outbid either of those teams when it comes to prospect capital. So if they want him, they'll get him. Now there's some sort of weird rumor out there about him and Randy. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know that if it's true, if that dissuades the Mariners from actually trading for him. If that rumor is just BS, then I think it should, without any hesitation, go get Yandy Diaz, and then you just figure it out. You move Mitch Garver to the full-time backup catcher role. You DH/first base Justin Turner, and you swap whatever other at-bats in that spot with Yandy Diaz, and you just interchange those two. Then we're talking about upgrades really up and down the lineup. So you get Julio back, you get JP back, you have Victor Robles now essentially going to be playing full-time in a corner outfield spot because of his resurgence. So you'll have an upgrade in both corners, your center fielder's back, your shortstop's back, you have two new first basemen that can both hit better than what you had Your backup catcher position is actually like solidified now, and it's no longer in this weird limbo that they're doing right now with Garver and Cal Raleigh. And you could say you feel a lot more confident about this lineup as of July 31st than you did on July 22nd, 23rd, when, we were ready to cancel the season.
I think one of the most fascinating things with the players that the Mariners acquired is not just a certain veteran presence, obviously more so for Turner than Arozarena, but postseason experience. You've got two guys who are used to winning and know how to win deep into the postseason, something that lineup has really needed. And I think that is almost an intangible that you can't even put a price on, that they were able to acquire and improve upon.
Even besides the postseason success, which is really nice, I think it's just a confidence factor.
Yeah.
They acquired a couple of guys who are both hot, which, you're only streaky until you're not, and you never know. When you insert yourself into this current lineup, did I miss something? Any notification? No.
We're trying to stay right on.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on it. But it's even just the factor of confidence that the rest of the lineup feels. I got to be honest, after game 3 against the Angels when they got swept, I couldn't imagine anyone in that lineup is confident at all that they could hit, that they could score, that they could move runners over, they could do legitimately everything. And then over the 48 hours between them and the next game, they get Randy Arozarena, and what do? They come out and they score 10 runs, and they scored at least 6 in every game since that point. It's not a one thing fixes all. Randy instantly makes everyone around him 100% better, because that's not how baseball works. But are they more confident than they were this time last week? Significantly. And that's so huge before we even get to October.
And let me fill people in, because I'm guessing on a national stage, people aren't keeping tabs on every single final score of a Mariners game. But to your point, just to fill people in, the Mariners on this past homestand, after losing 2 of 3 to the Astros, in which they found a way to win one, it didn't look pretty. But then they turned around, got swept by the Angels at home, and not just got swept, they scored 3 total runs in the whole series. So for all the narratives that have been around the Mariners offense this year about how abysmal it's been, like, that was the low point right there. Like, they couldn't score off of Griffin Canning. They couldn't score off of Soriano. They didn't do much off Tyler Anderson either, but they got some of the bottom tier arms in the Angels rotation. They still weren't scoring. So to see what they've done from that time to now, yeah, it's turned a lot of tides.
And we should probably take the next 30 minutes real quick to talk about JT Chargois. That was a great acquisition too, right?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Ryan, go take control of the yoke again, please.
I was just going to say, I think that the 2 bats to me that have made the biggest impact so far, to see Jazz Chisholm go into that Yankees lineup and Randy Arozarena into the Mariners lineup, it's high energy guys that come in. And like you said, there is that mental, it's the mental credit that the teammates get of, our front office believes and they just got a big piece. Regardless of what they're doing that year, those names carry some weight. And I think it's definitely paying off for those 2 teams. My question to you guys now is, what exactly does this AL West race look like down the stretch? Do you feel confident? Because the Astros are always going to be that team that you gotta really kill them to win that division. Do you feel like the Mariners have done enough, or do they have to make at least another trade here to feel confident that they're going to be able to take down the Astros down the stretch?
So I think the Mariners roster is better than the Astros roster. The problem the Mariners have had this season, they get out to their 10-game lead. Everyone is playing well enough for that to show. But for most of this season, the reason the Mariners are in the predicament they're in right now is because most of the offensive part of the roster has been so drastically underperforming their career averages that it made the Mariners roster look worse than the Astros roster. And in that case, you'd be like, well, maybe I would take the Astros. But if the Mariners can swing Yandy Diaz and everyone legitimately just plays to their career averages down the stretch, the Mariners are easily a better team than the Astros. They have a better rotation. They have a bullpen might be up in the air depending on the day, but I'd take the Mariners bullpen. Jimmy Garcia is unbelievable. He is a absolute stud. And then if you can go, you add Randy, Justin Turner, and Yandy Diaz to this lineup. The Astros score some runs, but can they score enough runs to offset how good the Mariners pitching staff is? And then with how much better the Mariners lineup will be with these three guys. I will note, I don't know what the updated ERA for this month is, Lyle. It's probably significantly higher after last night's abysmal performance in Boston. But there was a point at the end of that Angels series where the Mariners had a 2.66 ERA in July as a team, 2.66, and they were 6-12 at that point. They had one of their better pitching months, and it seemingly did not matter because the offense was that horrendous. But you get a league average offense, and the pitching staff pitches to, I don't know, a sub 3.3 ERA. And it makes all the world of difference. And that is a better team than the Houston Astros. And I would feel confident in them over the final 2 months.
Yeah. And the Astros aren't going to go away. Like, right. Obviously, they're going to get Kyle Tucker back. And I don't really know what Yusei Kikuchi is going to do for him, to be honest. But, like, they added something to their rotation, which has been drastically depleted this year from injuries, etc. Like, they're not going to go away. We know they can hit. Like, when you have Altuve, Yordan, Tucker at the top of a lineup, and Bregman, who's since whatever mid-May gotten really hot, you can't ignore it. But I think TJ's right that, like, the Mariners had a 10-game lead for a reason, and they had a 10-game lead with nobody hitting. So, like, if the Mariners can just hit a little bit, they don't have to be a top 5 offense. They don't have to be a top 7 or 8 offense. If they can be the 14th best offense in the league with their pitching, I think that's enough. And you would hope with the moves they've made and some of the bats they've acquired, they can do that. With Julio coming back, that they can do that. I don't know how much people have paid attention, but like last 15 games, last 2 weeks here, Jorge Polanco's finally starting to look like Jorge Polanco. That could do a lot for these guys. Like in the second half, if you have Jorge Polanco do what he was actually traded to do, which was essentially be your second best bat, like that can do a lot. And maybe he's not even your second best bat. Maybe he can just be, again, be a 110 WRC plus hitter. That's drastic from what he did in the first half. That's such a leap forward. So yeah, it's going to be a dogfight. I don't think the Mariners are going to run away with it at this point, but with what they've acquired, they have the pieces to go out and win this division. And if they can get one more bat here in the next hour and 20 minutes, you'd feel even more confident.
I think it improved Polanco, who's been hitting cleanup. So obviously they're getting more out of him than they had in the past. And then you get Victor Robles picking him up off the scrap heap. He's played great, hitting leadoff for the M's right now. So, I think maybe just a change in personnel is probably one of those things. And Ty France, thanks for your service, but he's off to Cincinnati. That was one of those interesting deals. I think, I know you guys have covered so much on the Marine Layer podcast about, where that deal came from, because it's probably surprising to a lot of folks, but that AL West is kind of interesting. And there's still a couple more pieces for Oakland to get rid of, and the Angels. And it'll be interesting if maybe the Mariners get in on any of that action to scoop up some of those players.
So let me turn this back to you guys here for a second. Well, I will note on the Angels, because we've talked about those guys, because it seems like those are some of the bats that are going to be available here in the next hour and 20 minutes. The Angels and Jerry Dipoto don't have the greatest relationship in the world. And if you need anything to back that up, the Angels and Mariners have not made one transaction since Dipoto took over as the Angels GM. I don't think him and Artie Moreno get along. I think it was a bad split when time ended there between the two of them. So I don't know whose side it's on more than others. I don't know if it's more of a Artie Moreno really doesn't want to transact with Jerry, or Jerry doesn't want to transact with the Angels, but that does make things a little bit tougher here and as the deadline winds down. But let me ask you guys, because I kind of floated this out today. I floated it out for the Mariners' sake, but we can float it out for baseball's sake too. Like, who still has a chance to get moved here in the next hour, 15 minutes with all the knowledge we have? Like, sounds like Yandy Diaz has a chance. Sounds like some of those Angels guys have a chance. I mean, like, but it's not a lot of guys. Like maybe Mark Canha. Like, is there any guys like bats you guys still think, oh, they could really get moved here?
I think that Ward and Rengifo are going to move, I feel like. And I bet you they're going to move for a lot. So I think those are the two big bats that are left. Yandy, obviously, we've talked about it, is sort of in the background. Maybe he gets dealt. Canha, it makes sense to deal him. And if someone wants that right-handed platoon bat, they can get him. But I feel like the Tigers are just looking to get that money out the book, so I don't think it's going to be too much. Yeah, when it comes to the big pieces, I think everyone's just wondering Crochet and Snell. I mean, those are the two. And I also wanted to just mention that AJ Preller has done it again when it comes to trade packages, because not only did they get Tanner Scott, they also got Brian Hoeing from the Marlins. And in exchange, they traded Robbie Snelling, Adam Mazur, and Graham Pauley, all in the return. Not to mention, it looks like there's a fourth piece, Jay Bashirs, which I'm not quite sure who he is. But the bottom line, that's 3 of their biggest prospects in this deal. And I guess they couldn't get a starting pitcher unless they somehow pull off a Crochet deal. But the Padres building a super bullpen with Adam, Scott, Hoeing. I mean, they're just loading up on the pen, trying to use that to get themselves into a wild card spot or keep a wild card spot. So pretty crazy.
So here's one more thing with the Mariners that Lyle and I are going to be keeping an eye on for the next hour. We brought this idea up when JP Crawford got hurt. Do they try and swing something for a shortstop? Because they're not going to have essentially a starting quality shortstop at the big leagues for the next month. Because JP Crawford broke his pinky and the timetable was 4 to 6 weeks. And that's a significant chunk of games from now until the end of the season that you would not have trusted major league quality plate appearances or defense in the field. So right now they have Dylan Moore playing short, who's a utility guy. He's good filling in at short, but playing every day at short, some of his flaws have been exposed a little bit. Then they have a quad A guy in Leo Rivas who's stepped in and played a little bit of short as well, but certainly not a comfortable option, right? So if it's not another slam dunk bat, could be a shortstop. They could use some more depth there in the middle of the infield too.
Who's out there?
There's
Like,
no one.
I don't know.
DeYoung's gone.
Exactly.
Rosario went. I mean, if you throw out Brendan Rodgers, he's a second baseman. He's not moving over to shortstop again. There aren't any options.
Yeah, I agree. Like we talked about Nico Horner for a bit, but here's a good question. We can get to that in a second. But we talked about Nico Horner at one point, but again, with the Cubs trading for Paredes, I think when Jed Hoyer came out with those quotes, right, people assumed they were going to sell for good reason. But it seems like they're just trying to get controllable pieces for next year and the future. And Nico Horner's got a lot of control here. So I don't think he'd get moved either. So yeah, to that point, like a middle infielder would be great. I just don't know if one's available. I mean, we talked about Brandon Lau. Now he's not a shortstop, but like the type of thing where you could trade for him to play second, you can move Polanco over to third and mix and match a little bit that way. But yeah, I mean, okay. So this is from Ryan Brody. I mean, here's a name we've talked about, like, is Rooker staying put? I think so. It doesn't seem like the A's are willing to move him. They've started to ship some pieces off today, right? The A's, I mean, they traded Paul Blackburn, they traded Lucas Urseg, but Rooker's kind of their biggest chip, and I bet you they want a lot for him. And I also don't know if they trade him in division to the Mariners or not. Now, if he was available, I think the Mariners would be all in on him. I don't think he's getting moved here in the next hour.
So I don't know if you guys have heard this story, but when the A's were fire sailing last time and Matt Chapman was available, the Mariners blew the Blue Jays package out of the water with prospects. They put together a significantly better package. I think Noelvi Marte was in it. Brandon Williamson was in it, right? Two of the guys they sent to the Reds for Luis Castillo. They instead were going to send to Oakland for Matt Chapman. And the A's turned down a significantly better package for a significantly worse one from the Blue Jays to not trade him in division. If you want a measurement of what it would take for the A's to trade with the Mariners, like a 3x overpay.
But yeah, in general, we're talking a lot here, but in general, I don't think Rooker's getting moved. Like, it just doesn't seem like it.
We got another question here about the Orioles, and we talked about that a little bit before, but who are the pieces that are left out there that the Orioles would go all in on? And I'm starting to think that they're kind of done. I mean, Tanner Scott's off the board. They got their rotation help. Maybe they swing a trade for another reliever, but I don't even know what reliever that is. Maybe it's Kyle Finnegan's because you get that extra year of control. I think they do value that. So if I had to guess, my prediction would be Kyle Finnegan is the last piece that the Orioles bring in, and that would be nice. But I don't think that we're going to see the Orioles all of a sudden swing a deal for Crochet after they traded what they did for Rodgers. I think they're kind of okay with their team, and they decided not to put Basayo or any of those really big pieces on the table to help this team. They're looking at a longer window here.
If you're running a Major League Baseball franchise right now, are you trading for Crochet?
No,
I wouldn't touch him.
No.
So, and I think that's the issue. And then are they in the financial position to take on Blake Snell when they're already paying whatever they're paying Burns in arbitration and everything else? Like, I think that they ultimately look at Trevor Rogers and the minimal amount that he's making too on top of it, hope they can tap into a little bit more. They already paid some on the Zach Eflin, bringing that contract in. Yeah, I don't think that as much as we saw the ownership change and we're hoping that Baltimore would turn into a big market team, I don't think they're there. I think they're going to be less of a small market team than they were, but not necessarily going to jump and have a really big, payroll. So it's interesting to see what else they do here, but I don't think we're going to get much more on the Orioles. My prediction again, Kyle Finnegan. We'll see if that happens.
They're the one team that can force almost any other club, at least the selling clubs, to move off of a superstar player. Because again, it just seems like we were lacking maybe a true superstar moving at this year's trade deadline. And I think it all comes down to someone like Jackson Holliday, who you think is untouchable, but they are in a much different place, I think, than someone like the Padres, who, again, we all believe Ethan Salas is probably untouchable, but the Padres are much further away from a World Series than the Orioles. So if the Orioles say, all right, look, Detroit, we'll give you Jackson Holliday for a Tarek Skubal and a couple other pieces, cherry pick whoever you want, anyone other than, probably Riley Green, even Spencer Torkelson, maybe you could get him if you wanted him. I don't know where he's playing at that point, but you're able to do something and you get bias, you flip them over to Seattle and you eat some of that, you work something out, a 3-team trade. Would the Orioles, are they that one team with their prospect pool, as you said, Bassios or maybe even Jackson Holliday, would they do that to make the biggest blockbuster deal at this year's trade deadline if it puts them over the line for winning the World Series this year or next?
I think they've showed their hand that they're not going to do it. And I think this comment's a really good one because it does make a lot of sense. We've seen them trading Stowers, trading Norby. They're trading the guys that are more blocked long-term. So getting some value right now for Cedric Mullins. I talked about that in an article a couple weeks ago where I thought it made a lot of sense to trade him because if you put him on the market, maybe the best center fielder, because there's just not a lot of starting center fielders available. So maybe they're still shopping guys like that where they shuffle the roster around, but it does not feel like this is going to be the year where we see them offer the offer you can't refuse. I don't think that they're going to do that. Maybe we see them do that in the offseason when they're in a position to get someone like Burns again. Maybe it's Crochet in the offseason, but for now, I think they're pretty happy with what they got.
Yeah, that's the team right there, right? With the prospects and like you're talking about I don't know about you guys. I was a little surprised when they gave up Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers today for Trevor Rogers. I know he's got the control, but that seemed pretty hefty. But to your point, yeah, like they're still not touching, obviously, the Jackson Hollidays. They're not touching the Kobe Mayos. They're not touching the Samuel Bassios. Like they're not giving up those guys for some superstar yet. So it feels like, yeah, if they were going to do something like that, they're probably not doing it up against the clock here when there's a lot of pressure and you're trying to beat a deadline. That seems like something that's going to be much more thought out in what happened in the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm trying to look through here and see what teams were waiting on making a move. The Jack Flaherty question's still out there. It felt like last night there was some momentum that the Yankees would get him, and we still haven't seen that trade come in. So I think we're still waiting to see if the Yankees have another splash in them. If they end up with just Jazz Chisholm, it might be enough, quite honestly, because he's really invigorated that team. But I think Yankees fans are going to be upset if that's all they end up pulling off at this deadline.
Another team I'm curious about, and it represented their offseason as well. This issue played their offseason was the Twins.
Yes.
They're playing so well, but just there is no financial commitment. There's not enough to make additions at
That's
not
insane,
enough to make additions
by the
at
way.
this deadline and enough to suggest the idea they could trade Max Kepler away, which sounds like it would be a significant package to pry him away. But in an effort to save money, it blows my mind. If we're talking about someone who would fit on the M's, Max Kepler would. If they're looking for another bat.
Yeah. But they're doing this all while they're in a playoff spot.
I know, which is even more puzzling.
It's crazy. I as the Locked On Mets host at the trade deadline, I'm always shopping it with teams that are penny pinching, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right, the Twins want to shave some money. Where are the big contracts? And I looked at the books, like what big contract are they selling? I don't even get it. Their payroll is not crazy. That's a situation where it's like you might as well sell the team if you can't invest in it because They don't have a big deal. I mean, Correa, obviously, but they're not trading him. I was even wondering, like, is Pablo Lopez like a sneaky guy on the market because he hasn't had the best year?
Right.
And starting next year, he starts making $20 million. So if they can afford him at 8 this year, what's that going to look like when he's making 20? So if there was like an out of left field ace that moves, and not that he's pitched like an ace this year, but certainly in the past, there's an out of left field frontline starter, I wouldn't be completely stunned based on these recent reports if Pablo Lopez all of a sudden gets dealt somewhere.
Yeah, the
And if
Trevor Richards, acquisition. That's been the only thing that they've really done, and is that just like, hey, look, see, we did something. Now they've been linked to Cal Quantrill, who is supposed to be starting here in a couple hours for the Rockies. We'll wait and see if he ends up there. But if you do want to improve your starting pitching, you can go that route. If you want Elias Diaz, he's been out there. The Rockies would like to move on from him as their top catching prospect is knocking on the door in AAA and making a lot of noise. Like, those guys are available. There are still teams with guys to be had. It's just a matter of whether or not the Twins want to, add a little bit of payroll, not even a ton, just a little bit. And they're not doing it yet. There's still time, but I don't know what they're waiting for.
Is Peter getting a Twins Cal Quantrill jersey if he gets traded there? Yeah, the Twins are like, I mean, they need starting pitching, so it's kind of a tough thing to balance, right? In terms of, do you trade Pablo Lopez because they're trying to shed payroll, or to your point, like, would they try and add some starting pitching? Because like, their offense is good, they've got bullpen pieces, but if they get into the playoffs here, assuming they're going to have to go on the road too, you're lining up Bailey Ober and Joe Ryan, and like that doesn't feel like a rotation that's getting you through October. That's just me.
You got Peter Apple chiming in about sending Cal back to Cleveland. Win a ring. How about that? Yeah, I think that's the move, right, guys? Cal Quantrill's got to go somewhere. I want to we're going to change up the lineup a little bit. I appreciate the Marine Layer guys coming on here. We got Kevin Henry waiting to jump in the mix. So thank you guys. Make sure whatever happens at this deadline, Marine Layer is where you're going to go to get the best Mariners coverage on everything that they do. If they're done yet, if there's more that they add, they'll be talking about it all on the show. So thank you guys for hopping on board.
Thanks, boys.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting us hop on. This has been a blast.
Thanks for
Awesome.
having us.
Yep. All right, Kevin, bringing you on here.
What's happening, fellas?
What's going on? You're rocking some. What's the hat there?
Got the A's. I got the A's gear. I figure they're busy, so why not? I'm not going to put any Rockies gear on today because they're certainly not. So hey,
Should I feel great about Paul Blackburn? Should I feel amazing about that trade? I mean,
I think so. Why not?
we
Right?
got a Blackburn comment right here, which I guess we've gotten multiple because I got the Met stuff behind me.
Kevin, we because you're wearing that hat, it's actually fitting. Ryan and I need to tell you, you have been traded to Sportskeeda.
Oh man,
Sorry.
I hope it was for cash. That's all I could say.
We got a couple free mics out of the deal.
There you
you know,
There we go.
We're podcasting. We don't get a bucket of balls. We get a pallet of microphones. That's what we get.
Well, and I do love the fact that you say Cal Quantrill and Peter appears. It's like Beetlejuice. So thanks, Peter. I appreciate it, man.
You only say it one time and it appears. One time, one Quantrill, one Peter. It's great.
It's right there. It's right there for us. All right, so we are final hour here pretty much, and we're still waiting to see some of the big shoes to drop. Kevin, what's been the most interesting trade for you today? Has there been something that's jumped out that really kind of surprised you up to this point?
I don't know about surprise. I was expecting AJ Preller to do something, and sure enough, he did. So, I mean, I love that move for the Padres. You know, and I'm going to go back a few days because I was down in Phoenix over the weekend, and the whole AJ Puck thing. I really do think that's going to be an underrated move for them and what they did. And I hope you all haven't already talked about that, but that's been something
No, we haven't.
stuck in my head since then. I think the Diamondbacks have had a real sneaky good deadline and really fortifying that bullpen down there. Now, I heard Christian Walker, you know, with the injury, we'll see what happens there. But as far as their pitching goes, I really like what they did with that.
And the acquisition of Josh Bell immediately,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I forget if he was designated for assignment or if he was just straight up waived, but basically going, hey, look, you want to get rid of this guy? I guess we'll pick up his contract. It's a real nice win-win for Bell, who's been a part of a lot of postseason runs. This is his third trade deadline in a row, I believe. Getting traded. So I think you're right. The Diamondbacks have kind of had a sneaky good deadline. They're one of those teams that have had so many injury concerns and guys banged up that have finally started to come back. They're right there in the fourth wild card spot, if you will. So they definitely are ready to maybe make some moves here with their sneaky good deadline.
Well, I want to actually jump right off on that because you look at the NL wildcard race right now, and there was a lot of talk earlier in the season about how it was just the Braves and then a bunch of slop under them. I think I was calling them on Who's Better a lot, the NL wildcards, the slop. But now it's what it was. I mean, a lot of teams that were 500 jumping up and down, there just wasn't a good team in that mix. All of a sudden, though, looking at this wildcard race, you had the Mets, the Padres, the Diamondbacks, the Cardinals. The Pirates are still hanging in. But particularly those four teams, the Mets, the Padres, the Diamondbacks, and the Cardinals, only two of them can make it. And I feel like those are some really good teams. From what's been done at the deadline, who has improved their chances the most? Are we saying the Padres with the bullpen that they just built? And is that enough to push them over the top compared to some of these other teams?
I'm going to go Padres just because I do think it is. But I also know that, my friend Patrick and I were having a discussion the other day about Bob Melvin. And is Bob Melvin going to be able to push the right buttons in the second half of the year? Patrick made a really good point the other day. Can he be that guy that actually leads them to the promised land and to that wild card? We saw how it went last year in San Diego, now in San Francisco. I know that they're kind of doing a weird thing there. But I really think the Padres are one to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I want to give a little props to the Cardinals too from what they've been able to do. Their team that looked like they were just absolutely dead in the water, and they're still could get creative. Dylan Carlson, one of those players that they're dangling, right? Controllable player for a couple years, a nice old school baseball challenge trade. Hey, you're a big leaguer for my big leaguer. Maybe that happens, but the Cardinals fortifying their rotation a little bit with a guy like Eric Fedde, getting Tommy Pham back into the fold to play a little outfield. They're right now on Tuesday, 2 games back of the wild card, sitting behind the Pirates, who have been kind of interesting. Like, okay, Jalen Beeks, you got as a lefty. He's pitched at times a lot better than what his numbers show. I think in a better spot where he's not overexposed in the 9th inning like he was with Colorado. He'll be better. Nick York, they're getting a little infield depth for Quinn Priester. That was kind of interesting. But as far as impacting the big league roster, Cardinals doing a lot better job of that than the Pirates. Reds, they're taking a step back. They're sliding there. So the Cardinals, I think, are going to be one of those teams that can sneak forward just a little bit. And I don't know. We looked at the Mets, and shoot, a couple days ago, had we recorded, Ryan, we'd have been talking about the number 1 NL wildcard Mets. They were there for a minute. I think Atlanta, those are big moves there with Jorge Soler and with Luke Jackson. Those acquisitions, I think, move the needle a lot more than what we've seen the Mets do. So that can be problematic for them. Padres bullpen, not flashy, but that's an area of need. So that's really strong. I think the Cardinals maybe might be able to make a run a little bit, if you will, against a team like the Mets.
The Mets have been the best team in baseball for 2 months now, and I think they're sort of leaning into that and saying, all right, we got Jesse Winker. We helped out this lineup.
Fair.
I think ultimately the Mets are looking at this, and this is what David Stearns has done with Milwaukee for all these years. And in a big market, it's a harder sell, but you don't want to trade the cost that it took to get Trevor Rogers, for example, right? The Mets were in that race. What do they have that's equivalent to what the Orioles gave up? And I'm actually going to bring Jack on, surprise him. Hey, Jack, you're on screen.
Hey, guys.
Jack, am I crazy to say this? That Norby Stowers package, is that like close to Acuna Beatty?
No, I don't think so.
Stowers is
Stowers. So I've been a Stowers truther for a bit, and the framework of my Stowers truthing, I should say, is this guy's too good to be in the minor leagues. It doesn't mean that he's going to be a star, but he's the Norfolk Tide's all-time leader in career homers, and that shouldn't happen for Kyle Stowers. Like Luken Baker, you get it because Luken Baker has no defensive value, and it's like, all right, yeah, it makes sense that you are the Memphis Redbirds all-time leader in career home runs, but that shouldn't happen with a guy like Stowers who can play center, who I don't have it in front of me, but I think the career OPS in AAA is in the very, very high 700s or low 800s. That feels a little too good for a guy that was a good advanced college bat. My thing is the Orioles are in as unique of a situation as there is in baseball because they can look at guys that are borderline top 100 prospects and say, hey, when I close my eyes, putting the Mike Elias hat on, when I close my eyes and think about the 5-year window, I don't see the number 98 prospect in baseball on the field for us in the next 5 years. And that's Connor Norby. And when was the last time we said that about an organization? Yeah. I don't know if we've ever said that before.
And so to bring it back to the Mets, as we're talking about the Mets having an underwhelming deadline, they're going to have to trade Acuna if they're going to get a big time, player in there. And for the Mets, you envision the next 5 years. If nothing else, Acuna could be an amazing utility man off your bench for a long time here. So, and even as recently as this season, I can see a world where Acuna is playing a role in September as just a pinch runner and a defensive, replacement. So the Mets, they haven't gone all the way in, but I think what they've done is exactly what has gotten them to this position. David Stearns has a quick hook on a lot of guys. We saw them DFA Jake Diekman this week. They've been shuffling, and they're getting their production, find a way to get to a decent bullpen. I think that they are going to be okay, but they have not won the deadline like some other teams. In this comment, I don't know if that's what made you laugh, Jack.
That's awesome.
One of the teams we haven't talked about very much, and based on what you just said, Jack, about the Orioles being so uniquely positioned, is the Dodgers, because I think the Dodgers are a team at various times. They are positioned where, hey, if we look 5 years from now, we might not have a spot for a guy. And immediately I think about their catcher spot, right? They lock up Will Smith to an extension before the season starts. And you got Dalton Rushing and Diego Cartaya, who, say what you will if you don't believe in him. Those are two basically top 100 catchers that they've got really no room for, both of them. Maybe they can find room for one of them in the backup spot. But you look and say, is that another shoe that we're waiting to drop? Are they going to start, maybe making some bigger moves and move off of the one or both of those catchers?
I would think so, but I was also listening to you guys in the front 20 minutes when talking about Crochet, and what you guys were saying is very off-season, kind of coded, right? In that sense where it's, hey, we might wait until January to do this. And the Dodgers may hold off on that. And they may say, hey, we're going to put together a Skubal package or a Crochet package, knowing that they have 5 months just kind of hanging out, and we're going to lead it with Dalton Rushing. I'm going to throw another name at you, guy in Great Lakes right now. Tyrone Lorenzo is a better catching prospect than Diego Cartaya, one of the better power bats in minor league baseball too. So you have your catcher on a 10-year deal. Will Smith catches the next 6 of that. When is Dalton Rushing going to catch 5 days a week? We're playing that game again. I don't think that happens. So I'm with you. You close your eyes, you view the team. Wouldn't you much rather have a frontline starter to go along with Glasnow and Yamamoto and Ohtani and Bobby Miller, assuming he bounces back, and Gavin Stone? Like, there are 5 guys that I haven't named. It's ridiculous what kind of situation they find themselves in.
That makes far too much sense, because I'm sure the Dodgers are tired of this. Hey, we've got 10, 11 really good starting pitchers that we just got to mix and match because they're all hurt. No, let's just have 5 dudes and just lock it in.
One of them needs esophagus surgery because they ate a bone and a T-bone steak. Like, have you guys ever done that? Like, I've discovered a bone in a salmon. Kevin, you're smiling. You've definitely done it before, right?
I inhale the steak that quickly, and it's like, oh yeah, there is a bone. Come on, absolutely.
I just want to note, it's from Bob Nightingale, but he says 1 hour remains until the trade deadline with 2 of the game's biggest stars still on the market, Garrett Crochet and Jack Flaherty. The funny thing is the tweet, I don't know if this is actually, it says Garrett Crochet of the Chicago White Sox and Jack Flaherty of the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers continue to be engaged. So I guess it's already happening. He's saying that it's Flaherty of the Dodgers.
Is that a fake account? I mean, I
don't know.
Would not make an error like that.
No,
double check,
never.
Double check.
It's got 460,000 followers about, so I think it's him.
Real quick interjection. John Morosi just tweeted that Roman Anthony was scratched from the lineup at AA Portland, which is interesting. It's tough because Tamar Johnson was pinch hit for in the 9th in Greensboro, but that was injury related. There are a whole bunch of situations like that. It was good for James McCann's trade rumors that he just stayed in the game after wearing 95 on the face. So
Yeah,
that was good.
that's
No doubt that he was an Oriole.
Kevin, do you know anything about Brenton Doyle? Maybe not being in a lineup or something, getting
You know,
traded. It's like
A little finger issue, and all of a sudden everybody freaks out. It's fantastic. Every time that somebody gets pulled, the Christian Walker thing yesterday, I know people freaked out about that for sure. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
there are reports that Roman Anthony, we have John Heyman and Chris Cotillo both saying that it's not trade related. So I guess he's staying put there. He's untouchable.
July 30th is a bad day for flu-like symptoms. If
Yo,
you're gonna get
the
sick on
worst
any
day.
day,
Seriously.
not today.
Yeah.
Not today.
Yeah.
Man.
All right. Well, we're still waiting on some moves here. We're less than an hour away. This is where typically things start trickling in. What's the move, Jack? What do you think's the one that's holding up the market right now? Is it Flaherty? Because I feel like Flaherty's got to go, right? So, like, what's the one that is? There's a couple teams on submitting some final offers that is gonna break the internet in a second here.
I want an answer from everybody sitting in here right now, but sure, Flaherty. I think it's Yandy Diaz. I think Yandy Diaz has a lot of suitors right now, and there might be a little bit of a bidding war there, and there might have been a team that snuck in. I mean, I think about the reports from this weekend that the Yankees and the Dodgers were running up the price on each other for Isaac Paredes, and then the Cubs came in at the last moment. I'm thinking that might just be hyper concentrated, with the deadline 49 minutes away on Yandy Diaz. So we'll see what happens there. But that's the one that I'm just like, when are you going to go and where are you going to go?
Yeah, I would probably go with Brent Rooker of the A's. I mean, they're you got a DH type, and you're trying to improve your farm system just a little bit. You might as well. There's no fan service happening whatsoever. They're doing the exact opposite. They're jacking up the prices for the final game at the Oakland Coliseum. So it's not like this is a guy people know and like. I think it was at some point last year where there was some content creator going around trying to find a fan in the ballpark wearing an A's jersey of a player who was actually on the team and had to make a couple laps. So it's like that's one of those things. Going back to Jack Flaherty, I think one of the holdups could be, and this is something that we've seen from time to time, he's going to get a qualifying offer. So, whatever that's pick 32, 33, you now have to beat that. You already are working with that. And so if the Tigers are saying, look, we're already sitting on a draft pick, this isn't an expiring asset that if we don't trade now, we're going to get nothing for it. No, we are getting something for it. I think that maybe complicates things a little bit, or at least allows them to drive up a harder bargain. And it's just going to take there being, maybe single digits left until that clock strikes zero for someone to go, but not to steal Kevin's Oakland Athletic player there with his cap.
Come on, I was wearing it for Rooker. And here you go.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's tough.
No, I mean, it's interesting how Oakland has kind of approached this deadline a little bit, in all seriousness. And I'm wondering, would they dare hold on to Rooker? I mean, is that even a possibility? Because I think there have been so many guys on that A's team that are like, oh, he's gone. But it just hasn't. We've still got 47 minutes or whatever. But absolutely, it's been very interesting to watch. There hasn't been the movement from them or the Angels, really. I think that we thought we were going to see.
So, Kevin, real quick interjection before you give your guy Ryan. I like to think about Oakland as the Vegas bunch. Who's in the Vegas bunch? Who's going to be on that roster when they go to Vegas? And I settle on Langeliers, Soderstrom, Yeloff, I guess.
Yep.
Who else?
Well,
Paul Blackburn. We know
Yeah,
that.
Paul Blackburn.
Yep. Not Tyler Nevin.
Mason Miller.
You
Just
know?
on the IL, yeah.
Yeah. I think Miller's almost your guy. Honestly, I think you're exactly right. Well, I think that he's a guy that they hang on to and they really push as, oh my God, you got to come see this guy bring the Vegas heat or whatever they say out there,
Yeah.
Just a guess.
Did the Pirates do something, or is that
I
just an excited?
I don't know. I just saw that in the comments. Brian De La Cruz. Per
Okay,
Heyman. Per
That's a thing.
Heyman, Brian De La Cruz is going
that's
to Pittsburgh.
nice.
Okay.
That's a good deal. Good deal for this year. Good deal beyond that. You got a lot of Pirates ties there. What do you think, Jack?
It's interesting, and I'm looking at a field with no Indianapolis Indians standing on it right now, so I'm sure they're all sitting in the clubhouse watching MLB Network as we speak. I don't know if Nick York is playing tonight. I do know that he will wear number 34 in Indianapolis, so like that's what I've got for you there. But no, I mean, it's weird, man, especially being at the AAA level for the deadline. It's bizarre, and there are names that have been floated in pirate circles, like, hey, Braxton Ashcraft came out of nowhere, and now he looks like a guy that could net them a serious get. De La Cruz, that's a legit power bat that hammers left-handed pitching. Are we going to see a borderline top 100 prospect in Braxton Ashcraft moved for Brian De La Cruz? I have no idea. So somebody could be packing their bags 50 feet away from me. It's really weird. It's weird, man.
It's crazy. I think it's cool to see them do it, though, to see them get, because the Pirates are sitting right there. I mean, we talked about those other teams in the wildcard race. Pirates are 2 games back. And, I think it obviously didn't make sense to shop for rentals, but you're not doing that with Brian De La Cruz. You have him for a couple years. So it makes a lot of sense to have shopped here for a piece that helps that lineup and for a couple of seasons. And yeah, they could be that Cinderella team down the stretch. There's you can't count them out. They're right in the mix here.
Because honestly, the lineup that they threw out there in Arizona without Brian Reynolds, it was at times I was just like, oof, so they definitely need to add some offense into that mix.
Wow. That's a legit get, Jun-Suk Shim. Shim is a guy that was one of the prized IFA signings out of South Korea 2 years ago, I want to say. He's dealt with a bunch of injuries. He has not gotten off the complex yet. He's 20 years old. Consensus top 20 prospect in this system. His stuff is video game. It is elite fastball shape that can run up to the very high 90s, flirting with 100. Some of the nastiest breaking stuff you've seen. There's just so much unknown with a 20-year-old that hasn't gotten off the complex yet because of injuries. But if the Marlins can, turn that guy into somebody who can flirt with 100 innings, I mean, that upside. Like you're dreaming on mid-rotation, disgusting upside in Jun-Suk Shim.
Jack, I got a question for you. After this deadline, is Aram a Marlins fan again? Has he fallen in love with Peter Bendix? Because I'll tell you what, that farm system, I mean, how many top 10 prospects are they adding to this system in the matter of 72 hours here? I feel like a lot, right?
Are they winning the deadline? As of this weekend, I thought the Rays won the deadline, but the Marlins are
Rays, Marlins, Blue Jays, but yeah, I think the Marlins, I mean, because that's the first piece. We don't know what else they're going to get in this trade. I think the Marlins might be the team that wins this deadline, and I didn't see that with the pieces they had. The return that they got for Rogers, and now if they get a huge return for De La Cruz, Puck was a good return. I mean, Bendix has done his homework and has done a really nice job.
Yes,
You have to give him all that credit for that, not just getting something for him, but who they got to improve their farm system. And probably because of that, Ryan, you might need to get over to Marlins Park to get in the lineup tonight, because who's on their big league roster now at this point?
Man,
I got a short drive. I can do it. I'll strike out 4 times for sure, but
interesting wrinkle. I saw with all of their previous moves prior to the Tanner Scott deal, they acquired 11 hitters, including the Arise deal. Or they acquired 11 players. 10 of the 11 were hitters. Only other guy was Usuk Go, who was that Korean reliever who was signed to that 2-year deal by San Diego. Yep. 10 of their first 11 prospects that they acquired by trading their big league assets were hitters, and now they're leaning into their pitching wheelhouse right now with a Robbie Snelling, with a Jun-Suk Shim.
Jack, I was going to ask you, because we didn't break that down too much. What did you think about the Tanner Scott return? Because it seems like, again, another great trade by Bendix, just getting a ton of talent into his organization right now.
That was huge, man. I mean, Robbie Snelling is a guy that has had a very underwhelming season, but he was just baseball's minor league pitcher of the year last year. That's good. Snelling, Major has proven that he can get out to the big league level. Now, I view Major very similar to Baltimore's Cade Povich, where he might get hit around the yard right now because he's not a finished product. And the stuff is not good enough to survive when you're at 80% effectiveness. I think he needs to be at 100% effectiveness right now. But Major, I think, can continue the maturation process at the big league level. I think you're going to see Major start a lot of games over the final 2 months for Miami. Snelling is a guy that, like, I want to see him get back on track. His fastball is down, I think, 2 ticks this year, which, it wasn't 99 to 97. It's about 93 to 91. And 93 to 91 is a big difference there. So if he can, whether it's regain feel or health or anything like that, I love what Snelling can be in that Marlins pitching factory. And Graham Pauley was a guy that, got big league ABs, was not ready for big league ABs, but he was also in a stressful environment. And now he goes to a stress-free environment. So, whether he goes to Jacksonville or Miami, I think this can really work.
They have rebuilt their team. It's pretty incredible to see what Bendix has done. And there was a lot of Marlins fans who were coming off the playoff berth and they're upset to see Kim Ng go. I got to imagine everyone's come around on it because you have a chance now. I mean, it's not going to be next year, but 26, 27, I mean, you never know. The Marlins, this might be the deadline that set them on a course to actually be maybe a sustainable winner, which we've never seen in my
We talk often about flipping the narrative about a team, and you can do it if you cash in your assets at the right time. The White Sox, I think, this offseason started flipping their narrative from, like a bottom 10 farm system in all of baseball to a top 5 farm system in all of baseball. I think Miami just went from bottom 5 to top 10, in
That's
a deadline.
crazy. Yeah.
And of course, depending on the prospect list that you're looking at, PJ Morlando, a guy that going into the season, you said, maybe is this going to be one of the top prep guys coming off the board? He's able to fall to them. And so that again, gives you a little bit more hype, a little bit more push to say, man, there's so much potential right now on the farm for them.
Yeah.
All right.
Kansas
What else?
City. Kansas City, we haven't talked about them. They're
Okay.
making those small kind of sneaky moves where you go, okay, no superstar real acquisitions, but you get Lucas Ursig from the A's, you get Michael Lorenzen. That's a nice little pickup to be your number 4 or 5 starter. I don't like that they had to give up the 39th overall pick in this year's draft to get Hunter Harvey, but still 3 quality acquisitions for the Royals when, they already had a pretty strong and aggressive offseason, bringing in a bunch of veteran guys. I think that's got to help be a nice little boost to the fan base.
But Walter Pennington's gone. That's the thing. And I know Jack was thinking that. I'm telling you, I think that was a big give up. I do think that's something I can see him doing well in Texas, but I was really surprised that they parted ways with him.
Kevin, did you get to chat with Walter at all in Denver?
Yeah, sure did.
10 out of 10
Oh
guy.
my God, such a great guy. Absolutely. Yeah.
I love engineer relievers. I love relievers that are engineering majors, and that's him at Colorado School of Mines.
That's a real school, folks. Colorado School of Mines is the name of the college that he went to. That's
I think their
crazy.
mascot's actually the Miners. Makes a lot of sense.
I'm telling you. No, and I talked to him the day after he had the whole back to Omaha, back to St. Louis, because he was the 26th man and all that stuff. And just the way that he handled himself, again, I know it's the engineer mindset and it's very the logical thinking, but still, he impressed me a lot. And so whenever I saw he was the get for Texas, I thought, okay, this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Got another piece of that trade for Brian De La Cruz, Garrett Forrester. Anything there? Yeah, on that, Jack? Or?
Power bat. He's power bat that'll punch a little bit. Shim is the deal here, and Forrester is a nice little flowery add-in.
Okay. Sounds good.
Kevin, real quick, I'm curious what you kind of had a feel for when it came to Urseg and that Oakland bullpen, because the Oakland bullpens, I feel like, are the one that have the quickest, line changes, right? It's rinse and repeat with relievers. They found something in Urseg in the front half, and I feel like that was all he needed for his value to be decent.
I agree completely. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about with Miller, that I think they're using him as one of those future pieces. But they saw Urseg. They were able to boost up his value. I mean, it was a perfect flip, to be perfectly honest.
Yes.
I thought they really did a good job at that. In the games that I saw him there at the Coliseum, he was very impressive, no doubt.
Anybody thinking that the Phillies, I mean, they're loaded right now, but
You're quiet.
Sure. I mean, they get Austin Hayes. All right. They get Carlos Estevez to pair up with Jeff Hoffman. I don't think anybody had those two guys reuniting from Colorado and being lights out back end relievers, but they feel like they might be one more move. Maybe it's a smaller one, but it feels like the Phillies might be, laying in wait here in the final 30 plus minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's just say it, and Jack, I think I put it on your Twitter or X. Sorry, but Carlos Estevez is a philosopher, man. I'm telling you, they're either going to love him in Philly or he will earn their ire. But I have a feeling that he's going to fit in very well into that bullpen.
I think they're going to love him. That team might lead the league in vibes. Sorry, Ryan. Like that.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
You've never heard
forgot you
Carlos
guys have the
Estevez
pop
Oh
sing.
my
star.
God,
Yeah.
what are you saying? Oh my God. Come on now. No, yeah, the Phillies are definitely a vibe for sure.
The point that I was making on the Just Baseball show about that Estevez deal is like they gave up a lot in Klassen and Aldegari to go get Estevez, but they I kind of did the run through and I used my fingers to count. There are 6 guys that I feel decent with throwing in the 8th inning in that bullpen now, and you have that lineup, a postseason rotation of Wheeler, Nola, Ranger, Christopher Sanchez,
Yeah.
and then 6 high leverage bullpen guys that I think have all been all-stars at some point except for Kerkering. Come on.
Well, the question is, what else do they need if they decide, because it's Dombrowski and you still have a team that's clearly, has the World Series aspirations. What are they adding still now that they've gotten Hayes, they got Estevez? Is there anything else that they even need? I mean, I know they were kind of in the market for a starter, but I mean, just roll with the rookie that's been throwing the ball well and just leave it at that. I don't know if they do anything else.
I wonder if Luis Robert Jr. isn't that guy for them if they want in center. If they're saying, Brandon Marsh is nice, we like him more as a platoon option, but is he that one? Because look, now is the time for them. I don't know reasonably how many more years that they have to go for this. I mean, maybe 2 more, but even still, just make that happen. And you put Robert Jr. there at Citizens Bank Park. I mean, that team is even more unbeatable.
So
IKF guys, we gotta drop everything. IKF to the Pirates. They're making moves, man.
So
It's
make
fair.
fun of it all you want, but
He's
he's
been
got a
good.
115 OPS plus right now.
Look, he's been good this year. They need it. Look, the Pirates are going for it. That's fun to see. And he's under contract. What is it? 2-year deal? I guess they got
2-year
him for
deal.
next year too.
Yep.
Yeah, Pirates.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
for what it's worth, Aaron Boone sung his praises whenever he was asked about him. Whenever they went up to Toronto in April, told about what a great clubhouse guy he was, versatile, could fill everything. So I know IKF's taking a lot of crud from a lot of the fan base out there, but still, really talked him up during the press talk.
Well, here's what I want to do. I'm going to bow out, go to the editorial side of things. And since IKF was just a trade that happened, I mean, what perfect timing to bring Peter Apple on.
Hey,
Dude,
can you guys
all
hear me
right,
okay?
yeah, I love that Ryan Finkelstein just handed over hosting duties and was like, okay, yeah, now we bring in the guy on the car phone. Isaiah Kiner Falefa to the Pirates. Your immediate thoughts, Peter?
The Pirates might win the World Series. All you got to do is just add IKF to your team and you're instantly a contender. No, but I mean, the Pirates are making some between the margins type moves, which are par for the course right now for the Pirates. We didn't think that they would, immediately add some big time pieces, but guys like this are just going to make your team objectively better. And who was the piece that they were using as a utility man?
I mean, like G1 Bay just got hurt. Triolo is there. Yeah, Kevin,
And
where
I
are
do
you?
get-
Where are you on this?
Yeah, I mean, they were playing a lot of those guys in Arizona this weekend. To be perfectly frank, especially after Rowdy went out with his back tightness, I think it was. You put Connor Joe in there at first base, and boy, then the bench is really thin.
Yeah, really thin. IKF also 600 big league innings at catcher because that was his only path to the big league. So maybe he takes over for Grandal and Bart. Why not? He hasn't been there in a decade, I think.
Yeah, wait, there's your third option if you need it for sure.
Why not? Everybody needs a good emergency catcher. Yeah, this is an interesting comment here. Chad Green is the last Jays domino that has to fall. The Jays are moving. They're moving and shaking right now in a really good way. Patrick, I want to get your thoughts on how the Jays have approached this to this point, because I thought they were actually going to be a little bit more fire sale-ish. I thought we'd hear more on Bassett. I thought we'd hear more on Bichette, and that just hasn't formulated whatsoever. Where are you on how the Blue Jays have approached this deadline?
I think Ross Atkins has done an amazing job with the Jays, because at least for what his goal is, because the biggest question was, are you going to move Vladdy, and if you're going to move Vladdy, you might as well move Bo Bichette. You get one more bite at the apple for 2025, and they still maintain that. I thought maybe they would do something similar to the Giants, this almost soft sell where, you know, the Giants give up Jorge Soler, but they still keep a bulk of the core. And so, like you just said, Jack, you go, all right, well, Bassett's going to go, or maybe Gosman, maybe not both, but one of those two guys, and you get some things. Instead, they just trade off all of those auxiliary pieces, and you go, yeah, okay, we can get another Kikuchi who's going to be a free agent after this year. Danny Jansen, yeah, we've got some catching guys in the pipeline. Turner was going to be a free agent. Nate Pearson, okay, maybe that's one that you could argue against. Yimi Garcia, now IKF. Like, you can replace those guys. You just can't replace Vlad Guerrero Jr. or Bo Bichette, and now they don't need to, and they can still go after 2025 with gusto.
Now, Peter, is the Yusei Kikuchi return for Toronto the win of the deadline?
Yeah, I think, and, you know, we started Just Baseball in April of 2021. I think this is the single worst trade we've ever covered. I do. I think this is the single worst trade I've ever seen come across the ticker. Jake Bloss for Yusei Kikuchi is an overpay.
And low profita. Yeah.
Just Jake Bloss. No,
And Will Wagner.
We haven't even gone to the other players in the deal. I'm just saying straight up, Bloss for Kikuchi is an overpay. And then you add low Perfido. And I understand that he comes up and he's not lighting the world on fire, but this was a guy who deserved a promotion because he was lighting the minor leagues on fire. So for a guy not getting consistent playing time, I don't expect him to just put up a 900 OPS when he plays one game, then has 3 games off, then he plays another game. You got to let him get a little bit of run. And then you add in Billy Wagner's son. I mean, I know he's 26, but like, he's a warm body. He has a head on top of his shoulders, which means he's an asset. I thought it was the single worst trade ever. And Patrick, to your point, like, I think that Ross Atkins has done a really good job for this crappy plan. And what I mean by this crappy plan is all they're doing is trading guys without any control. So I get it, sort of, if they think that they can be competitive next year. I just don't know how they're going to be competitive next year unless in this offseason they're spending a ton on more free agents. And now maybe they will, right? There's new renovations to the ballpark. They know that they have to sell tickets, and they know that they have to spend money to build back the trust of some of these Blue Jays fans after a tough season, then selling off. But I personally would have traded Bassett. I would have seen what we could get for Gosman. Look at the market right now. Imagine what you could get for him. Yeah. So for a bad plan, in my opinion, I think he's done that bad plan as well as possible. But I think the plan itself isn't a great one for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, it is a little kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
Hey, at least it's a 64-yarder. Like, you put a boot on that can. But
Yeah.
You're right. It is a little kicking the can down the road. Yeah.
But Peter, you're right. The fans, if they're going to buy in, they've got to know that there is a plan in place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like that there really is right now in Toronto. It feels like, well, you know, maybe the offseason will do this. I just feel like that if you're a Toronto fan right now, you're super frustrated because you don't feel any better about going into next year. Even though you're keeping those core guys, you still don't feel like there's much around them that could really compete against the Orioles or Yankees or whoever it might be.
We saw the
Exactly. You're
return.
seeing the rest. Oh. I was just
No,
going
no,
to say
you're
you're
good,
seeing
Peter.
the rest of the. You're seeing the rest of the American League East, whether it be the Yankees adding right now or the Orioles adding big right now, even the Red Sox making some moves. Like, I don't know. And then you look at all the farm systems of all the teams above you, and you see the Rays selling off pieces and reloading into their farm. How can the Blue Jays look at the next few years and think that we're going to be able to compete with these 4 teams? Because you either have teams spending a ton of money,
Let's see. Let's give him a chance.
Can you recover?
No,
Am I
he
okay?
can't recover.
Oh,
You're choppy, man.
Good.
You are choppy.
Well, I sort
Dang
of
it.
wonder. I sort of wonder. I'll buy you some time. Maybe you can catch up. I sort of wonder if maybe the plan is because, again, you're right. You don't feel great just having 2 guys, and you got 2 pitchers in Bassett and Gosman. So okay, that's 4 quality players. But what else do you have after that? Can Alejandro Kirk get back to it? You know, being an all-star, and there's just a lot of questions. Maybe they make that big move this offseason. So instead of there being, 10 15 teams that are looking to add a big power bat like a Vlad Guerrero Jr. And we heard from the Marine Layer guys that, there was a quality offer out there on the table for Toronto for Vladdy. But now you've got, in theory, 29 other teams going, shoot, yeah, we would love a full season of Vlad Guerrero Jr. Now maybe you get slightly better offers, but even saying that out loud, it goes back to kind of what we've been talking about this entire deadline. It's a seller's market. I don't know that you can get more this offseason for either Bo or Vlad Guerrero Jr. than you can right now.
Yeah. By the way, we just found out the return for IKF. Part of it, at least, is Charles McAdoo, who is one of the, if not the breakout performer of minor league baseball this year. Charles McAdoo, 13th round pick last year out of San Jose State, 22-year-old between high A and double A, 87 games, is hitting .315 with a .932 OPS, 14 homers, 17 bags. He plays third base. It's a legit breakout, and they're playing with like newfound money. They had no idea that he was going to be this, and they turn a 13th round pick last year into Isaiah Kiner-Falefa for a year and a half of control.
You know who knew Charles McAdoo was going to be what he is? Paul Skeens. He pitched against him in the Mountain West at Air Force when he came to Denver. We talked about, 2 years earlier, dude, you're shutting things down at 7,000 feet above sea level. He's like, yeah, it's not a big deal. But that start against San Jose State when he's mowing them down, he's like, the one dude, man, the one dude that can play that we knew. Hey, we got him. I don't have to worry about facing him anymore. And Charles McAdoo, well, guess what, Paul? In an interleague game, you may have to face Charles McAdoo again.
2029 World Series. Buckle up. Skeens and McAdoo.
I'm tuning in.
Shout out. I mean, I know I was just making fun of Ross Atkins, but shout out Ross Atkins. How do you get Charles McAdoo for freaking IKF? I mean, like, how did the package for Brian De La Cruz is absurd. I mean, this seller's market is insane.
It's insane. Now, immediate thoughts, Peter, because we haven't gotten it on the Tanner Scott deal yet. Dude.
So, I mean, as a Padres pennant holder future, I got that 25-1, and I got the World Series 50-1. It's exactly why I invested in the Padres, because I knew that AJ Preller never runs out of prospects to deal. Now, if you're a Marlins fan, you should be over the moon. Tanner Scott for Robbie Snelling, even by himself, I think would be a good package. The fact that you also get Adam Mazur, who I feel like his value has been a little bit diminished because he comes up, gets destroyed, right? Doesn't have a good start to his kind of career, but he's still a fine prospect. Graham Pauley's kind of been up and down, but I think he can hit if you just give him some run. For a couple months of Tanner Scott, yeah, the Marlins did really well here. But, I mean, I don't know how to fault AJ Preller. He just keeps doing this, and he's obviously trying to go win a World Series, and I respect the hell out of him for it. So, yeah, was it a lot for Tanner Scott? Yeah, but it makes the Padres really dangerous in the back end.
And I do think, and I want you guys' opinion, I think the Dodgers are starting to look a little bit. I think that there's a little bit of it in the rearview mirror right now, despite everything that's gone on in LA. And I'll tell you, that was a big topic of discussion in Arizona over the weekend is, would there be a chance for the Diamondbacks to catch them? Would there be a chance for the Padres to catch them? And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Well, did you guys see that report, too, that the Dodgers were near a Tanner Scott trade and that the Padres jumped in at the last moment? And to your point, Kevin, I think that perfectly illustrates what you were saying. They don't want to get got by their quote-unquote big brother, but Jason Adam and Tanner Scott in that bullpen with Robert Suarez and company, like, that's a really good back end. Really good.
Really solid. Now, the huge wild card here is Yu Darvish. And it has been such a crappy situation for Darvish this year. And I know he went on rehab for a minute and it was just not right. And he shut it down and they're kind of giving him his space. I saw a statement a couple days ago in regards to Darvish. If they got him back, obviously that is a totally different beast in a wild card series. But Patrick, I want to throw this to you and then Kevin. Is that Padres rotation right now good enough to get them into a postseason series and win a postseason series?
I don't know if it's good enough to get them into the postseason. I mean, it's good enough to maybe kind of hold water right now, like just be good enough to get in. But in the postseason, I don't think they've got those three guys that they could lean on for even one series. It's very suspect. I am kind of when talking about these two trades for Adam and for Tanner Scott and the relative overpay and the fact that there's really nobody left, it seems like, in the coffers right now for AJ Preller. What's the over-under on AJ Preller being the GM of this team in 2 years from now? Is this kind of the final salvo of a GM going, hey, man, I've been given all of this room to go and try to win a World Series, and sure, what I've done has been impressive, and if they can get to the postseason 2 out of 3 years, like, that's still something for this organization that has been really bad for a very long time. So that's still an accomplishment, but is it really falling short of a goal? And you know what? Hey, these are my final pieces. I might as well blow it out of the water on my way out. Is he still going to be the GM in 2 years?
Quick answer is no. Kevin, your thoughts on that?
Wow. I was not expecting that. I got to be honest with you. And I think going back to the rotation, I think Matt Waldron's really a wild card with that.
Yes.
I mean, he had such an incredible June. I mean, he stumbled a little bit in July, but if he's a guy that could actually be very consistent for them, then, you know, in the postseason where you know you're going to whittle down your rotation, it's possible. But again, they've got to get to that point, and I still think the Diamondbacks are absolutely the team to watch out there. I think they could well have, you know, if they got to figure out Jordan Montgomery, of course. But I still think that they've got a possibility to catch them out in the West.
Yeah, Patrick, to your point, I know a lot of executives like preaching, leave your situation better than how you found it. I don't think that applies to AJ Preller. I think he's going to go out guns blazing. He's just going to see what happens here.
Can I play quick devil's advocate to that?
Sure.
Are the Padres just going to let him blow up the farm system, then fire Preller? Like, is that if the plan is to like fire Preller? I mean, wouldn't you just do it already instead of letting him get to another deadline, trade the entire farm, and then see what happens and then fire him? Because then you're letting go of arguably one of the best scouts to build it back up. It's almost like they're trapped with Preller. I almost think he never leaves because he's just like, okay, fine, I won't build you a better farm system. And they're like, shit, maybe we shouldn't trade him. But then he's going to trade him away, and it's just a revolving door. I almost think he's there for life. I think he has. It's almost got crazy where I think the Padres and him, it's like one of those marriages where the husband or wife just keeps screwing up, but you just love them so much and you can't let them go. I think it's one of those things. I really do. I don't think he's going to get fired.
Could it be Stockholm syndrome? Well,
maybe.
But here's the thing: is that because there's nobody, not nobody, but and they do seem to be getting these, you know, high impact players in the draft that, you know, they sell when the stock is high, that have a really good skill that you can kind of market in that way. And look, the prospect pundits like yourselves, you fall in love with these guys, right? And so I sort of wonder if Preller is targeting those guys specifically to pump up their value than to trade. But at a certain point, there's going to be nobody left to trade to supplement your roster with. So that's where I sort of think in the next year plus, that's where it really goes downhill. And now you've run out of options and your time's up.
But Peter, you go.
I was just going to say, here's the thing, Patrick. We've been saying that about the Padres farm system since Preller got there, and he just keeps reloading. And he just keeps
that's the thing.
Building more guys. Like, they have DeVries. They have Solid still. Like, I was going to say they still have
Lesko's gone.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, they bring up Jackson Merrill. So it's hard to, like, say that all of them are going to be gone, because then in the next draft or an international free agency, he's going to bring in another guys, and then he's going to trade them away too. It's a revolving door.
Fink is back for a minute, and he's got Huáscar Brazoban going to the New York Mets. Your thoughts, Ryan Finkelstein?
I mean, come on, I'm fired up here. David Stearns, man. We're playing chess, not checkers, getting all these undervalued assets. Got Brazoban for 4 more years after this season. We're rolling. Who needs Jason Adam and Tanner Scott in your bullpen? Okay, we got Brazoban and Tyler Zuber. I mean, come on.
Fellas, Baltimore acquiring Eloy Jimenez.
Wait, should we talk about, before we talk about Eloy, should we talk about Brazoban's control that Fink just brought up for whatever reason? We got control with Huáscar Brazoban.
Yeah, we do.
No, let's talk about Eloy. That's sick.
Wow. All right, Kevin,
Wow.
you're on the spot here. Immediate reaction to that. The Orioles just got a guy that is going to DH whenever he's in the outfield, like he
Yeah.
pulls, tears something.
That's what I'm sitting here going. I'm going, where does he fit in? And does he fit into that clubhouse and culture too?
Yeah.
So that's the immediate reaction. It seems like a little bit of a strange fit, but I guess if you're saying he's going to be our DH and just bring the bat, well, so be it.
So be it. This is fascinating. I've had a very, I don't want to say love-hate relationship with Eloy Jimenez because that's mean, but I've had a very frustrating relationship with Eloy Jimenez. Very frustrating. Because he was, he came over with Cease. At the end of the 2020 season, I was thinking this could be one of the greatest fleeces of all time, where the Cubs get Jose Quintana and the White Sox get Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez. They were two of the more electric prospects in all of baseball at one time. And Cease, you saw it right away. It took some maturation, but Eloy comes up 122 games his rookie year, 31 homers in 122 games. This guy per 162 has a 790 OPS, 30 homers, 94 driven in. That's awesome.
That is.
The problem is 55 games in 21, 84 games in 22, 120 last year, 65 so far this year. It's tough when you're made of balsa wood, but if anybody's going to protect him, it'll be one of the deepest offenses in Major League Baseball, if not the deepest offense in Major League Baseball.
Just think if that fastball had hit him instead of James McCann, we'd still be putting him back together like Humpty Dumpty or something. So, yeah.
Are you saying some guys, when they fall down and go boom, that it takes them a lot longer to get up? Kev, who are you
Maybe it's
suggesting
coach.
that sounds
Maybe.
like? Here's my question. Is there, and again, we haven't seen the prospect package, if there is any package at all. Could this just be almost a salary dump in a sense? And maybe they're, the Orioles are just offering up a little bit of something and they're just going to buy him out for $3 million next year? Or is he worth the difference, the $13.5 million, because he's going to get $16.5 next year? Or are they just buying him out? And so the Orioles are just renting him. And so here's a decent prospect. Now you don't have to worry about it. Is that the math?
This might be peanuts. Elijah, get involved here.
Yeah.
Elijah Evans. I think this is peanuts.
Yeah, I've been waiting all day for this, fellas. I agree with Jack. It's peanuts, honestly. It's nothing. So you got to remember, Eloy's got a $3 million buyout at the end of the year. So any team taking on his contract is basically agreeing to pay $3 million this year, which is, oh man.
There
Is
it
that
is.
true?
Whoa.
No way.
Elijah hops on the stream and then it happens.
No. I haven't seen anything.
No,
No?
I haven't seen this.
We just got fooled. We
It's a
just got
suggestion. It's a
Yeah,
suggestion.
we might have
Bring
just
me
got
back
played.
on so I
Okay.
can make
Okay.
comments.
Point being, going back
Jose
to Eloy.
Canseco is reporting that the A's are finalizing a deal to acquire free agent Jose Canseco. So there's also that out there.
Okay, well that's
Going
a good
back to
one.
Eloy real
LOL
quick before we
JK.
keep going.
How about that recovery from this guy?
It's nice. It'll be minimal. It'll be something like a flyer probably. Ultimately, Baltimore's not going to give him $15 million next year unless he absolutely goes off. That's his club option for next year. So realistically, Eloy gets you maybe a flyer. Honestly, the White Sox saving $3 million on him the way he's been playing the last month, I'll take it. I really think if anything, you're just offloading the contract. So we'll see what happens. It's surprising for sure. It's definitely did not expect him to get moved. I remember saying last week I was looking at the White Sox options and I was like, Eloy, Moncada, and Benintendi are three guys you would love to move, but nobody wants that contract for any of them, right? Because you're paying Moncada or Eloy a buyout, and Benintendi has 3 more years, $15 million. Nobody wants that either. So the fact that they got anything is funny. Ultimately, like the Orioles, they can afford to take that swing. I think that's actually one of the few teams that makes sense because worst case, you have a guy that can hit a home run on your bench, and best case, he slots into a DH spot a few days a week, especially against left-handers, and then he can mash a little bit. So, I mean, if anybody was going to do it and just take the contract, eat the $3 million at the end of the year, and have an extra bat in their lineup, it's probably the Orioles. So I can see it.
So notable names, and I love that this is being brought up. Crochet, Flaherty have not gone. No LA Angel has gone yet, right? Taylor Ward has not gone.
Estevez went, but
Estevez, yeah.
but not today. Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
There goes another White Sox heading out. Tanner Banks to the Phillies. Not that anybody knows that name. Probably most people don't. But Tanner Banks is a pretty good left-handed reliever. He's not bad. I mean, he's something. He has a really good expected stats this year. I actually think he's probably been one of the better White Sox relievers, honestly, most of the season, which is funny to say. But he's probably one of the best arms in that bullpen. And the Phillies, just continuing to stack depth in their bullpen.
The Phillies bullpen. Holy crap.
it's
Like the
crazy.
Avengers. I mean, seriously.
Kevin, like, what's your confidence level that the Angels are actually going to do anything here?
0. I mean, to be perfectly blunt, I mean,
I'm really jaded by them, and I'm glad to know that you're jaded by them too.
I am. I mean, I really think that, we've talked about this being the whole seller's market and everything else. And if you're really going to build for next year, these are the guys, and I don't understand holding on to them. It makes 0 sense. I mean, we still got some time left, but some of those guys that are in the lineup tonight, and they're not going to trade them, makes 0 sense.
Fascinating.
Yeah, they've got Matt Moore is going to be a free agent after this year. Brennan Drury, Luis Garcia. I mean, they do have a couple guys. Kevin Pillar too, right? Like, great fourth outfield option on a championship winning club, right? So
and Pillar saying he's gonna retire after the year is over with, and everybody's like, oh, he can go chase a ring. Won't that be great? No, the Angels are just like, no. Were you dreaming of something? We're not gonna let that happen. Sorry.
Yeah, bingo.
Hey, they're getting Mike Trout back maybe at some point in the second half. So
watch out.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hey, I haven't heard you guys talk. I didn't hear you guys talk about it in the front hour. One of the head scratchers for me was Lane Thomas going to Cleveland. That return felt very steep for a guy that I know is going to be a contributor for the Guardians, but that was Alex Clemmie, who was a second-round pick last year. Stuff is crazy. He's a tall, lanky left-hander, and Jose Tena, who I think is ready to be a big league utility piece now. That was a weird one, but I mean, looking at Eloy just getting moved from Chicago and looking at what Kansas City has done today, grabbing Paul DeJong and, also grabbing another reliever here. Like, I feel like Cleveland is doing just enough to hold on to that division, but like, my confidence is not higher than I think it was 72 hours ago.
What I ask you, Dale, Jack, is like, has anybody else closed that gap though? Because that's the thing that we mentioned with the Twins, right? Like, I agree with you. I don't think Cleveland has quite done that, that big step, but like Minnesota hasn't done much, and Kansas City's additions are all within the margin too. So it's like, is there really a competition on their back? Because I don't really see it that way.
I think all Kansas City needed to do was operate between the margins. I think Kansas City got better at the deadline.
Yeah, I think they got better, but did they get Guardians better? I don't know. I mean, I hear you. I think the Guardians, it'd be nice to see them get one more move in, but I don't think they've gotten that much, separation really.
What do you guys think?
Personally, I don't know that Kansas City needed to do that much, Elijah. Sorry, man. But I think that they've got enough talent there, and I think they've got enough momentum that if they just shore up some of the edges, I think they've got a real shot. I think if they get in, they're going to be trouble.
I would still take Cleveland over Kansas City. You're right, Elijah, in that way. But I do think that with the acquisitions that they were able to make with Lorenzen and Paul DeJong, right? Like they again operating on those margins, I think can be that difference to boost them up, just because they've seemingly come out of nowhere, right? In the last year, with this core of young guys and the veterans they brought in the offseason, I think it's enough that they could make it interesting. That being said, I still would prefer Cleveland.
Best tweet of the deadline goes to Stephen Nesbitt of The Athletic. The Pirates hit on a Kiner before. Let's see how this goes.
Ooh,
that's really good.
Yeah,
that does not make me want a Ralph. It was good. Come on, if we're gonna
that
pun,
was good,
pun.
Patrick.
Oh, let's pun, baby.
Man, Elijah, real quick for you. The woe trade of the last 48 hours for you. What was it?
Woe as in surprised
like
it happened?
Whoa, like the one that
in...
invoked the strongest reaction from you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, I think the Tanner three-teamer.
I was going to say either Fedde or Tanner Scott. Those are the two things where I think it was opposite direction, right? Like Fedde, I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a different type of trade. I thought it was going to be a little more. I wasn't as upset as some people. I still think that return is some decent players. It just is less than I expected. And then the Tanner Scott today, I was like, okay, this is pretty. This is pretty nuts. That was where I was like, all right. I mean, I think they talked about it earlier. You guys did a good job covering it on the stream earlier. Like that's 3 of the Padres' top prospects for a closer and a rental closer, right? Like that's just the reliever market is unbelievable this year. That was the biggest thing that really stuck out to me, I think. And then also the Kikuchi one as well, I should mention. That was the other one where it was like after seeing what Fetty got, turning around and seeing what Kikuchi got, the way he's been pitching lately was like, what are we doing here? Astros, and then also what are we doing here on the White Sox side, right? It goes both ways. Also, yeah, Crochet not getting traded, that just came up, which is whatever.
Yeah, Kevin, I want to get to your, strongest reaction trade over the last 24, 48 hours, but Crochet not being moved, I'm not going to say it makes all the sense in the world to me. I think it needed to be the perfect trade partner that was going to immediately extend him. Frankly, I thought it was down to Atlanta, and that was it. Like the only team that I thought would have made any sense there was Atlanta, because they would extend him and they would care for him over the last 2 months of the season and work with it moving forward. They would give him that 6-year patented Braves extension. But now I think this makes a lot of sense that the White Sox just hold him. They come in at a very cheap ARB number and they move him for a king's ransom this offseason.
I think you're right. But, one thing I'm really curious to see, just speaking about Crochet, is, and Elijah, you tell me, how they treat him and vice versa the rest of the season. It's going to be, I would think, pretty brutal as far as just the clubhouse vibes coming off, knowing what happened before the deadline, knowing the demands and everything else, and knowing how maybe he killed a deal just with some of the things that he said ahead of time. I'm real curious to see how the clubhouse and the organization reacts to him and how he's treated the rest of the way in.
I just want to interject here. We're at the most frustrating part of the deadline, the won't be traded, and Yandy Diaz apparently won't be traded. Jack,
somebody just got traded. Jack Flaherty is an LA Dodger per Jeff Passan.
That's
Nightingale nailed it.
There it is.
Wow.
There we go.
Harvard Westlake grad, right?
Yep.
I mean, he's from LA. That does seem to be the perfect fit. That makes a lot of sense.
Name the 3 others.
Harvard
Westlake.
Giolito.
Yep.
Pete Crow Armstrong.
Yep. Bingo. There we go.
Wow.
Max Fried too. Right.
Yeah. No, I think you said Fried right away, right?
Somebody said that. Yeah.
Aram, you want to talk Chagua?
I think actually the guy that they got was kind of nasty. I was looking at the clips that Elijah put out. I have not heard of him at all, so I'm not going to pretend to have.
He's kind of gross.
Looked gross.
Aram, who is the – so, Kevin, I'm sorry I'm skipping you. We're going to get back to you right after Aram, but Aram just hopped in here. What is the woe trade of the last 24 hours for you?
June Suk Shim.
Yeah.
No, I know that was like a fun one, though. I was excited about that. That's a good question. I'd probably go with the Tanner Scott trade, just because it doesn't surprise me that Preller would, be aggressive here with that. But I think the idea that, they're going to sell low on another arm here and Robbie Snelling and another bat that they legitimately destroyed the value of themselves in Graham Pauley by just ragdolling him, up and down. And then also throw in at a major, which I know he has not been good at the big league level and since being in the PCL. But I mean, this was a guy that was dominating in AA, dominated, at the lower levels before that, still just 23 years old. He's got to probably tweak the fastball and stuff like that. But I just wasn't expecting all of that. I saw maybe one of those arms being a sell low and then maybe some lower level guys. But I think that's the deal that probably shocked me the most. Just because I just wouldn't expect that much to need to be added on top of a Robbie Snelling, who, again, I know has a 6 ERA in AA this year, but he's 20 years old. And the template is there to be able to get him right. I mean, this guy was a 4-star linebacker. I think they're going to be able to work with that and get him going.
We talked about 20 minutes ago, the switch in narrative for the White Sox, and it started this offseason where they went from a bottom 5 farm system in baseball to a top 10 farm system in baseball. I think the Marlins just did the same thing this deadline, did they not?
Yeah, this blew my mind. I didn't think. I mean, we were talking about on the Just Baseball show, right? They have some assets, but how much do they really have to be able to replenish this farm system? Is it going to be going from a bottom 3 farm to a middle of the pack farm? I thought that was probably one of the more ambitious expectations there, and instead we're looking at a farm system that was one of the worst in baseball that I think now can get into that top 10 range, especially if the Marlins are able to develop. The one thing we do know that they can do is develop arms. We know that they're, putting a lot of time and money into the infrastructure of developing bats, but I think looking at a Robbie Snelling, you get that guy right. Look at what they did with Ryan Weathers and the Padres struggles there with him. If they can do something similar with Robbie Snelling and even something a fifth as good with Adam Major, I think you already are in a very, very strong position. And I like the balance of the June Suck Shims of the world that, a guy that has elite stuff, but, we could see if he could stay healthy, but that upside there is really exciting. And I'm also really encouraged for Marlins fans, the fact that, the word initially was, oh, they're going to go for these younger guys, upside guys, and it's going to be a process. Instead, it's been a lot of upper minors guys, and that was a big surprise for me. Just seeing the Norbies of the world, Stowers, of course, you figured would be thrown into any deal at some point this deadline. But
I'm
still,
glad to see him get big league reps.
Goodness, he's going to get freed now. I mean, it's unfortunate because he's literally like almost the Spider-Man meme of Griffin. So, that part is unfortunate from a selfish perspective, but from a Marlins perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. It's got to feel good for Marlins fans. And, I think some of the people that were really, hating on this rebuild, I think it's clear that it's different. And I think it's also clear that with their pitching core, they feel like they can maybe piece together a young, scrappy offense and be in it as soon as, the end of next year, the year after that, which is really fun.
Yeah. Kevin, I want to jump to you now. What was your strongest reaction trade of the last? I mean, let's stick to today. What has been the one today?
So, I was going to go with the Marlins Padres as well. So I'm going to flip it a little bit, and I'm going to say I love the fact that the Guardians got Alex Cobb, and I was really surprised that they actually got him, and that San Francisco let go of him. So that was a real surprise for me. I love it. I mean, obviously it's a little bit of a roll in the bones to make sure that he's going to actually pitch, be healthy, be effective, all that stuff. But, we were talking about the AL Central a few minutes ago, and that was one that was in the back of my mind for sure.
Got you. So if this is the return, I'm sure there might be some more. The Detroit Tigers, Jack Flaherty again going from the Tigers to the Dodgers. The Tigers, you can kind of, by the way, Tampa acquiring Dylan Carlson. So the Cardinals finally shed that outfielder. There you go. And this is a reclamation project for the Tampa Bay Rays. But my thought on the Flaherty return, if it does include Tyrone Lorenzo, you look at the 3-year, 4-year window for the Detroit Tigers, there was a solution at essentially every single spot in that lineup except for behind the plate. And they found their solution behind the plate in Tyrone Lorenzo. And shortstop and Sweeney, you think? Would you rather run out Ryan Kreidler or Trey Sweeney at this point?
Trey Sweeney. So I like that too. I don't love the idea of the guy that, I think 80% of his production has come from Albuquerque now going to Comerica. But, I mean, how much more were they going to get on top of Lorenzo? They got a shortstop that can, again, just put more irons in the fire. I think he could be better than Kreidler, but I agree with you. Like, right now, all the chips were kind of pushed in on Dingler, and you could have held it down all right. But I think now you have a guy that can profile as your everyday catcher in the next couple of years. I mean, that's pretty good for an arm that not a lot of people were really lining up to sign this offseason. And for the Dodgers, of course, I mean, this could be a big time difference maker considering where the rotation is at.
Yeah, Patrick, Ryan Yarbrough for Kevin Kiermaier, 1 to 10. How much does that fire you up?
3.5. I mean, look, he was designated for assignment. Yarbrough was dumped, and so it was basically like, hey, do you want this guy? He's a little bit more controllable. We'll give you Kevin Kiermaier. So again, it's like the rich get richer. The Dodgers, they're guys on their scrap heap. Teams are willing to actually offer up something of value. It's what they do. For me, the deal that got the biggest reaction was the Jason Adam trade. I don't think this is going to be like the Chris Archer deal where, the Rays end up getting Austin Meadows, Tyler Glass, now Shane Baz. But for a guy that's a relief pitcher who's 32 years old, for the Padres to give up as much as they did and couple it with the Tanner Scott deal where 3 of their top 5 prospects are going for relief pitchers. It just is like, wow, they are really just going crazy. So Lesko goes, Homer Bush Jr., a 3rd prospect as well. It just seems to be a lot for a guy that's, going to throw 20 innings at the end of this year. They're going to be, high leverage innings. How many pitches is this guy going to throw to give up, 18 years of club control for these prospects? To me, that's just like a wow. Maybe that's the best way of describing this entire trade deadline is it's a seller's market and you have to give up a lot. That was the biggest realization for me that's how this was going to go down.
So humongous loser here, the LA Angels. If I have this right, the only, and again, it's par for the court, Kevin. I mean, you preach, man. But
Yeah.
the only guy that they move is Luis Garcia going to the Boston Red Sox right at the deadline. So Taylor Ward is still an LA Angel. Rengifo is still an LA Angel. This is unbelievable.
Is it?
But like every year,
Not what it is. Yeah.
every year they do this.
Them and the Rockies share the same brain. I'm just telling you, they absolutely do.
Owner brain.
I think
Owner
at this
brain.
point the Rockies deserve more credit. They're drafting well, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some hope at least. Yeah. But
Oh man.
yeah, the fact Tyler Anderson's still there, the fact that
Rengifo?
yeah,
Rengifo was a fit for like almost every contender.
Everybody.
Right. That's just it.
I mean,
I don't understand on so many levels.
and how do you see what you got in the Estevez deal, and then not be just eager to make more moves, right? I mean, you got to be thrilled with that return and say, oh my goodness, like what else can we deplete? Like you're looking at, I don't know, not to gas up the Marlins too much, but you're looking at Bendix right now liquidating the bullpen. Doesn't care. Anybody, take him. Brazoban, anyone, like take him. And I think that's how you got to approach it, especially if you're a team like the Angels or any team that's clearly far off, but they live in this alternate reality that they're always a player or two away, which I don't understand. But
that's the difference between the two teams is one is run by a general manager, a baseball man, and Peter Bendix, and then the Angels, their owner, Artie Moreno, is the one pulling the strings. And that's the big issue between the two. One's able to do their job, the other one can't.
Interesting prospect deal coming in at the buzzer. Pirates and Orioles, a trade of the Bradenton, Sarasota neighbors. Pirates are sending Patrick Riley to Baltimore. Billy Cook is the return going from Baltimore to Pittsburgh, which is like kind of interesting there. And I didn't think we'd be talking about a prospect-only deal at 6:05 when the deadline was 5 minutes ago, but that's fascinating because the Orioles need pitching prospects badly, and the Pirates need hitting prospects badly.
Riley's fun too. And I mean, Billy Cook, how far down is he on the depth chart at this point? Even with some of the moves that they've made, I like that a lot. Right, we saw Riley at the spring breakout, and the stuff was pretty live. So
Fastball's legit, man. All right, trade is official here. Flaherty to the Tigers for Tyrone Lorenzo and Trey Sweeney. So it is just those two, and frankly, that's plenty.
Pretty darn good for a rental. As good as the Arm's been.
If you had to guess, Arm, how high do you think Lorenzo is? 67th on the top 100 the last time. Is he even higher than that now, or is he around the same spot?
Probably hovering around the same spot. He'll probably climb a little bit. That's a good question, though. But he's kind of slowed down a bit this year. I mean, it's been a bit of a slump, but then I don't want to be too hard on him. He just turned 21 years old. Like switch hitting catcher, there's a lot of adjustment that goes into all this whole thing. But he has hit a bit of a wall. So yeah, I'd probably say he stays around the same range.
But still a top 70-ish prospect for rental authority. And Trey Sweeney will be up with the Tigers very soon, likely.
I mean, and Lorenzo has so much more upside still too. 90th percentile exit velocity of 108 miles an hour will be one of the best in the organization the second he gets there. And again, for a 21-year-old who just turned 21, switch hitting catcher, I mean that's exciting power potential. He walks a ton. Like that's a great get. Great get for the Tigers. And again, for the Dodgers, Flaherty could be a difference maker. And I imagine he's going to really elevate and rise to the occasion there, being close to home and just pitching in some meaningful games here. Clearly something's really clicked for him this season.
Kicking it to the group here, and Kevin, I want to start with you. This is the Guardians rotation at the end of the deadline. Tanner Bybee, Gavin Williams, Ben Lively, Alex Cobb, Matthew Boyd. We played the Padre game about 20 minutes ago. It's probably not good enough to put together a deep postseason run in San Diego. I'm not sure that rotation, and we love Bybee and Williams. We love a healthy Williams. He hasn't been healthy this year. That rotation, to me at least, is not good enough to get deep in the postseason.
Not at all. I agree with you completely because, again, Cobb's a wild card. All indications are he's coming back, but still question marks abound there. I don't think it's something that you'll get you to the postseason, but it's an early exit out of there. I mean, my opinion, absolutely.
I think Gavin might be back. He might be back. 9 Ks last time out, 6 innings. I know it was against the Tigers, but then he shoved again today. I mean, he's the X factor, I think, for them. It's great to add some more pieces in, and I still do agree that the rotation's a little thin compared to the other teams that are in that tier 1 realm. But Gavin is starting to look like he's shaking off the rust, which would be huge.
One might have come in late here. This is Mark Canha going to San Francisco.
Craig Mish seems to believe that, and it's not even believe, seems to know that there's another Marlins trade coming in here too.
Really?
Yeah.
Who would even be left? I mean,
Nardi.
Somebody turn off the lights.
Who's pitching for the Marlins? Are the Marlins playing tonight?
They are playing tonight. I did take the over on BetMGM. I'm just curious who in the world they're going to be able to wheel out there to throw. Apparently, they've got like a bunch of arms ready to go at the hotel by the Trop. So we'll see who goes.
Is that Belloso? I think that's Valente Belloso. It's just him cloned 4 times.
Cabrera,
Rodri Munoz. Don't forget Yanni Chirinos.
Yep, Yanni Chirinos.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Major just pops right back into that rotation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine, unless they want to work on some things in AAA, try to get him right. But he could just do that in the bigs with Mel Stoudemire Jr. But man, it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
What do you see as Snelling's like somewhat timeline? Given that last year was incredible. Obviously, he's taking a step back this year, but he zoomed through the lower levels last year, and it's still like it's been rough this year, but it's not like it's not a ton of talent.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think by the end of or sometime next year, second half of next year, he's going to finish. I think he sticks in AA the whole year this year. Probably needs the offseason to figure out kind of what went wrong this year, why the velo slipped a little bit. His release was I don't know. I doubt it was intentional, but he dropped his release a little bit, and I think that's kind of caused the fastball to not play the same way, and also caused the slider to not play the same way. So I'd imagine he's going to go to the lab a little bit. Again, the Marlins are that's one of the few things that they've been good at in the past. So see how that goes. But I assume if he comes back and he's throwing the way he should throw and the way we've seen him, like he should start the year next year in AAA. And I mean, he could be up as soon as they need him. So I think sometime midway next season would make a lot of sense to me. And that's why I think it's crazy that, we've seen him kind of slip. And I agree that he should fall down these rankings as he's backed up this year. But this guy's 20. And in his age 19 season, went low A, high A, double A, and pitched to a 1.82 ERA. And now stuff backs up a little bit second year after going 108 innings. And we're going to totally flip the other way on him. Like, I think this is a good opportunity for him and for the Marlins. It's got to be pretty exciting.
Gotcha. I'm looking at the Orioles here because, and thank you very much, Caleb. Mish said the Marlins are done. So It looks like they may have a team that they're running out there in their game tonight. But the Orioles just added more help. Austin Slater is going to Baltimore. So they just got 2 outfielders in the last 20 minutes of the deadline. Call Eloy Jimenez an outfielder if you want. He's not so he'll DH a bit, I think. So you have Eloy Jimenez, Christian Pache, and Austin Slater added to the fold. Austin Hayes exits the fold. But I want to throw the rotation question at you guys again, because they're looking at a 5 right now of Burns, Grayson Rodriguez, Dean Kramer, Zach Eflin, Trevor Rogers. That can absolutely get them through the regular season. And you're looking at a postseason 4 of Burns, G-Rod, Eflin, Kramer. Like, I think Rogers is the odd man out there. Where's our confidence level on that?
I'm okay with that rotation. I don't love it, but I'm okay with it because you can win with Burns and Grayson Rodriguez. I think Eflin will be good for most starts. And then from there, I mean, if you just kind of piggyback those 2 guys, Kramer and Rogers, and again, we haven't seen what Rogers can do with the Orioles getting their hands on them, making those adjustments. You might feel a little bit better about them, but you've got 2.5 starters, and then with the other 2 guys, that's enough, I think, to get you through. And with the bullpen, it's good enough. I think it's good enough. And if the bats are playing, I mean, all they got to do is sustain that.
Yeah. Okay. Last thing I want to do, I want to go person by person, winner of the deadline, loser of the deadline. Okay. So, kind of preaching to Matthew's point, which fan bases should be most disappointed. I want the most disappointed, but also the most fired up. And Elijah, let's start with you. Fan base that should be happiest with this deadline, and that could be from a selling perspective, that could be from a buying perspective. fan base that should be the most pissed with the deadline?
Yeah, I think it's myself and Aram here. I'm going to stick to our JB teams here. I think the Marlins killed it. I really do. They completely overhauled that farm system, and I think the White Sox are towards the top of it. I'll say it because it's a personal frustration, but I think in general, I think that'd be pretty universal here. The White Sox had a chance to become one of the premier systems in all of baseball, and they whiffed on it. Honestly, I mean, they got some pieces, but when you have guys like Crochet and Robert and even Fetty, which they didn't get enough for, like they had a chance to really become the best system in baseball, possibly, or the second or third best, and they didn't improve all that much.
Gotcha. Interesting. Fink, what you got on that?
Yeah, let's see. I think trying to go a little bit different. I'd say most disappointed is a couple teams in the Central that are generally doing well. That's the Brewers and the Twins, where it's just par from the course. You have a chance, but we know they're never going to push the chips in, and they didn't. I think that's pretty disappointing. It's hard for me to ignore the Marlins too. I don't want to just follow suit, so I'm trying to find somebody else that did really well. I'd say the Padres. I mean, look, you just sort of know that that's what's going to happen every year. They're going to trade a bunch of prospects, and you got to feel better that with that bullpen, they did enough to separate themselves in that wild card race. So I'll say the Padres did pretty well, even though that the amount of prospects they give up to get where they did, it's a lot, but that's just what they do.
Gotcha. Patrick, where are you feeling?
I think the Blue Jays did a great job at this year's deadline, but is the fan base overjoyed? Is the fan base buzzing? No. And that's where I go, honestly, the Orioles. Like, yeah, they didn't get Jack Flaherty, which was one of those guys it seemed like they could be linked to. But the fact that you're bringing in, 5 guys, Trevor Rogers, Zach Eflin for the rotation, you get Dominguez for the bullpen in the outfield /DH, Jimenez, Slater. Like, those are moves that teams that are going, for a deep run of the postseason make, that's going to make your fan base say, yeah, no, our GM went out and improved our roster. Definitely, especially when you look at, the lack of moves I think the Yankees made. As far as frustrated fan bases, the Twins have to be right there. Trevor Richards, the only one on record. Yeah. And I'm going to say the Rockies fans are not happy right now, and they shouldn't be, because after kind of an aberration last year with there being like 4 or 5 trades, bringing in all of these arms, they only end up trading 2 guys, and their top catching prospect is still blocked in AAA. And they have a couple expiring guys that they could have moved, and they're pulling 2 of their best guys off of the trade market. Cal Quantrill, I think there were those conversations, but they actively pulled off a guy whose value has never been higher in Ryan McMahon, and they get nothing for them. So does that stymie your rebuild a little bit to Rockies fans? I think it does.
I think so. Yeah. Kevin, where do you lie?
I'll go Dodgers. How about that? I think the Dodgers plugged the holes that they needed to. It took till 5 minutes before everything closed down, but they actually did it. Yeah. I think Rosario could be a good piece. Kiermaier could be a good piece, but the Flaherty deal, obviously, I think was much needed, and they found a way to get it done. And disappointed, yeah, I'm going to agree with Patrick on the Rockies, but we've already beat up enough on the Angels.
Yeah, that's right? Angels, Rockies. Every we could do that every deadline.
We could. So I'm gonna take the tap in putt and say those 2 for sure.
Yeah, Aram, where are you sitting?
So it's funny, like the more I've been thinking about it, because I think Lorenzo's a great get, but like just processing further, like Jack Flaherty's has been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball this year. So I think the Dodgers are easily big time winners here, because they add, as Kevin alluded to, but not only did they add a superstar? Did they go trade Turner, Max Scherzer like we've seen in the past? No, but it's clearly a seller's market. They add one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball this year, and we just talked about, like, I feel like a broken record, but some of these rental prices have been crazy. They still get a few pieces, some solid ones at that, and they don't give up any of their top dogs. Yes, Lorenzo is good. Yes, Gerald Perez is a solid prospect, but at the same time, like, I mean, you're not losing sleep over that at all. They have so many better pieces that they ended up not parting with, and I think they made as much of an improvement as just about anybody at the deadline. So that's one for me. And of course, I got to go with the Marlins, who exceeded every expectation possible. I also thought the Tigers would do a little bit better on that deal, though, and they didn't really do anything else creative. And from what I've gathered, they may have had some better offers on the table that they didn't take earlier. So, Scott Harris, it's going to be interesting to see how they maneuver the offseason.
Last one that just came in. Gregory Soto goes from Philly to Baltimore. They pair up again. So they went Dominguez and Pache for Hayes. They pair up again. Gregory Soto leaves leverage. So they're down to 6 high leverage arms now instead of the 7 that we were sitting at. Gregory Soto goes to Baltimore for Seth Johnson.
Ooh,
That's a good get for Philly,
So-
I think.
they literally acquired Seth Johnson and then traded Seth Johnson because Patrick Riley's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And then so they're like, okay, if we're parting with one, we need to bring one back in. I like that, considering that I would have been like, ooh, you probably can't afford to give up a Seth Johnson right now, but makes sense now that they added Riley. Both high carry fastball guys, great characteristics, and you know, I feel like it's kind of the same thing. It's a wash. So being able to swap Cook out, it's really like they traded Billy Cook for a reliever, which is great. So I think that worked out pretty well. I do
Correct
like
me if I'm wrong.
Billy though. Good characteristics on the fastball.
Isn't Johnson then? I mean, even given that the Orioles may not need him now, like you just explained, he's probably one of the better arms in the Philly system now, especially because they just traded Klassen and Aldegary too.
Yeah, which is crazy. It's a good point. I think that's probably why they're like, we don't want Billy Cook. Figure it out on your end and send us
Exactly.
Seth Johnson. 100%. You know, with the way McAble is struggled too, like they need upper minors arms just for insurance policy for next year. I think you're 100% right, Elijah. And with Klassen and Aldegary gone, it's starting to get to a little bit slimmer pickings, especially, you know, getting towards the upper levels.
They were pretty quiet today, but I would say my winner was Tampa because they did exactly what they do. Like they fit their template perfectly. Where guys get expensive, they priced out and they got hauls. For Adam, they got, I think, a sneaky, really good package for Randy Arozarena. And I thought they got a decent package for Eflin. And hell, man, like Morel's playing second base tonight. I want to see how that goes at second base tonight in Tampa. So that'll be really interesting. Aram and I talked about Hunter Biggie on the call up. That guy can be a high leverage arm for them immediately. Ty Johnson's fascinating to me. I'm disappointed in the Brewers, and like I'm leaning into this narrative again. They went and got Frankie Montas. Okay, great. Do another. Like they needed multiple starting pitchers here, and they got one. And that guy is a 5, and he's making $16 million this year.
And I'd argue it's the deepest farm in Major League Baseball at this point. If you're talking about top to bottom talent, I mean, you could trade from AAA, you could trade from the DSL. They've got guys from top to bottom that teams would be all over. So I agree. I think the Brewers, I mean, but it's just not the way they operate. So,
Yeah.
you know, we're docking teams for being themselves, but like we should, if you know, if they really wanted to win it, you know, if they really wanted to push the chips forward, they could have done it. But yeah, I'm with you. The Brewers were a little disappointing, but Montas at least kind of salvaged it a bit for me.
Yeah. Fellas, this was phenomenal. I don't think I've had a more fun deadline in quite a long time because this thing started on Thursday and like we were nonstop go from Thursday evening until Tuesday at 6 o'clock, which was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, you guys crushed it.
It's fun.
Yep.
So huge thank you to everybody that joined. The Marine Layer guys were on here as well. Peter Apple was on here as well. But all you guys were hanging out and having a good time. Fink, you are the man for coordinating all this, and this was a hell of a deadline stream.
It's fun. It was fun, guys. All right, later.
That's a sign off, baby.
That's a sign.